With Vanguard advice, no matter what your retirement goals are, they can help you get there and enjoy it for years to come. The financial journey is all yours, but you never have to take it alone. That's the value of ownership. Visit Vanguard.com and explore Vanguard advice. All investing is subject to risk. Fund shareholders own the funds that own Vanguard. Services are provided by Vanguard Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor.
The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
This is Speedball Mike Bailey. You're listening to Keepin It Strong Style. Yes.
Yo, this is Rich Latta from One Nation Radio. This is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We present to you the Ace of Podcasts, Keepin It Strong Style. Let's go. It's the Ace of Podcasts, Keepin It Strong Style. Covering New Japan, they ready to hold it down. Jeremy, Donovan, and the young boy Josh. Come and hit a job out and bury all the frauds. From the Tokyo Dome over to the G1. Social Suplex is the network where we can get it done. I'ma chill and let them have it, cause this is just an intro. Keeping the strong style, 6 stars from the get-go, boy. Yeah, from Tampa Bay to the Tokyo Dome, this is Keeping It Strong Style with your hosts, Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Joshua Smith. And thank you for listening.
Welcome to Keeping It Strong Style, the Ace of Podcast on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Jeremy Donovan here with the young boy Josh Smith. On today's show, we'll review nights 7 through 10 of G1 Climax 32 and cover all latest news in the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling. You can support our show by subscribing and following the Social Suplex Podcast Network or Keeping It Strong Style on the podcast app of your choice and leaving a rating and review. You can also get all the podcasts over at socialsuplex.com. Check out our Pro Wrestling Tee store, prowrestlingtees.com/social suplex. That's where you can get your official Keeping It Strong Style t-shirt. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider making a one-time or monthly donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and clicking on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. This episode is brought to you by the NJPW-EXT, the only browser extension for NJPWWorld.com, with features like dark mode, improved translations and layouts, custom and share playlists, synchronized viewing parties, and much, much more. It takes NJPW World to the next level, and you can visit njpwext.us today for details. Young boy, the final countdown is here for my wedding.
Here comes the G, all dressed in merch. Yo, you excited? You're getting married this weekend, bro.
Yeah, man, this coming Sunday. It's a big day.
Let's get the big question out of the way, okay? And the big question is, how would you like those who listen and support this podcast to support your wedding? Do you want them to submit like donations to this podcast, or you have like a gimmick set up for your wedding? I mean, I don't know what you want to do, but we have to monetize your wedding in some way.
Well, I mean, you know, if there are any listeners out there that are feeling generous and want to, you know, contribute some, I mean, I guess it'd probably make more sense for you to contribute to the show. So like I mentioned, you go on the Red Circle, hit us with a donation there. But if you really, really want to, I mean, I could send you my website, my registry link, and you know, you can buy some gimmicks off there. You can hit up the Venmo, where, you know, we're collecting cash for the honeymoon fund. Help your boy pay for all these remodels that's been happening the last couple of weeks in my house, you know.
my present is my presence. I'll be there. I'll be supporting you. No, this wedding, bro. You know, so we as groomsmen, Jeremy hooked us up, and you know, we went axe throwing this past weekend. This was a wild weekend because we had to have your bachelor party and like 4 NJPW shows within the matter of like 2 days. Bro, they need to, I don't know what they're doing. They need to stop having 3 shows in the same day. They had Strong, they had Music City Mayhem, and a night of the G1 all within the same 24-hour block. Like, but I digress. Anyway, so like we're throwing axes, and Jeremy hooked all of us up. He got us custom engraved boxes made out of the finest mahogany wood there ever was, and inside of it, these fucking awesome watches, and they're like wood engraved on the back of them. It has like our names and says we're groomsmen is sick, and it's actually, and I wouldn't say this if it wasn't true. I've been in a lot of weddings, and I've gotten a lot of quote unquote gifts. I hope none of those friends are listening, but a lot of those gifts were whack as fuck. This is an actual gift that I would continue to wear because it's a good looking, watch. So that's nice, and we're gonna wear those. I assume coordinating with our outfits as groomsmen, and then Jeremy got us a good tie. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of bad ties over the years that you just kind of have to grimace and be like, all right, thanks, bro. Like, but yeah, tomorrow I have to go to Men's Warehouse because I went to Men's Warehouse to pick up my suit rental so I could look fly for the wedding, and they fucked it all up, bro. Like,
haven't you given you a bad job out here, man?
Yeah, dude. We had it. They sized me like a month ago. They told me to come pick it up. It's far away. I drive out there, and then it doesn't fit. It's like, why did you guys size? I'm smaller. I've literally lost weight. I'm smaller and leaner than I was when they sized me. So I don't know how everything doesn't fit, but they had to size it all up. So tomorrow I'll be going to get that suit. And if Men's Warehouse fucks me again, I swear to God, I'll be like Kane. I'm gonna rain like fire.
Oh man, well I'm glad you liked the groomsman gift. Like you said, I wanted to make sure it was something something that lasts just more than that day, because I see a lot of gifts out there, a lot of gimmicks where it only is kind of good the day of the wedding, or like you mentioned, it's maybe not the best quality. So I wanted something that could last further than just the wedding day. And so I think the watch does that, and then the tie, you can wear that tie anytime as well.
I'll take money or alcohol. Those are good gifts, I would think.
Oh man.
And you don't have to use them on the day of the wedding. You can keep using them until you run out. So that's good too.
That's true, yeah. But yeah, it's definitely fun weekend, fun time, axe throwing with all the groomsmen, and lots of New Japan stuff to go down. And next week I will not be on the show. This will be the first Keeping It Strong Style that I will miss. Actually, sorry, the second Keeping It Strong Style.
That one time you took that lavish vacation to Alaska.
Yeah, this will be number 2 for me out of what? This is 244 this week. So Chris Samsa, friend of the show, should be on next week with the Young Boy. So it's all in the Young Boy's hands, ladies and gentlemen.
If you've ever wondered what a podcast with just me and just Chris would sound like, you're about to find out. Boy, oh boy, it's gonna be one for the bro. Actually, what's funny? That one episode me and Rich did, like, I don't recall what that was like at all. And I know it was an important one because I think we covered like
it was it was like Super Junior Finals.
Yeah, we covered the Super Junior Finals
of 2019. Yeah,
like the match of the year.
Yeah,
in like in what was probably the greatest Super Junior tournament in history.
Oh, dude, yeah, that Super Juniors was incredible.
Oh man. But so it's not going to be quite as good this time because this G1 doesn't compare to that Super Juniors. But Chris will be here and he'll be supporting us. Jeremy, before we move on, I'd like to say something. I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were talking about how not just in the sports and entertainment and obviously the niche market of like pro resu, but just in general, there are literally millions of podcasts popping up all the time. And like one of the main reasons people create podcasts is like from like a narcissistic, like fame seeking sort of endeavor. And I was listening to this podcast, and they were talking about the reasons people create podcasts and the fame and the money and the notoriety that goes along with it. And I was like, bro, I have no clue what that's like. We did not create this podcast because we wanted to be famous. We didn't do it because we're trying to make the most money and grift people and sell boner pills and all this stuff. You know, we didn't do it out of a self-importance sort of mentality. We do this shit because we love New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah, man. It was literally our hate for WWE and being frustrated with that product, and then our love for New Japan Pro Wrestling and just everything that was happening with the Social Suplex podcast network. Yeah, it was just the love, the passion, and yeah, 244 weeks later, we're still here. The longest running weekly episodic New Japan Pro Wrestling podcast on the internet today.
Yeah, I mean, like, we joke around and we have like little bits where we try to like inflame our ego, but the reality is, like, I really don't think this podcast is ego based. It's just a conversation between you and me doing what we would be doing even if these mics weren't in front of our faces. You know what I mean?
Right.
And welcoming everybody that chooses to listen to it in on the inside with, you know, our conversations and our insights, what for better or for worse. And you know, you guys could be spending your time doing a lot of other things. We don't take enough time, I don't think, to always thank you guys for tuning in. But just know that this is you're listening to that reel. You know what I'm saying?
All right.
And also, I just want to, you know, congratulate Jeremy once again on his upcoming wedding. And, you know, that is so awesome. I'm glad that you've, you know, found the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. And even though they're going to be your roommate now and not me, that's cool, I guess. But, but you know, just want to congratulate you and wish you all the best. And, yeah, you guys are going to miss it this Sunday. You know, we're going to be living it up. Eating brunch, partying, dancing on the dance floor, tearing it up, and then, you know, and then I guess I'll come back Monday and yuck it up with Chris.
Yeah, it should be a fun weekend, and thank you, man. I appreciate those kind words. I appreciate your friendship, especially over the last several years as we've gotten closer, as we lived together and we did the podcast together, all our travels to Chicago and Dallas, New York, New Orleans. We've created a lot of fun memories over the years, and you know, this podcast is not going anywhere. I know a lot of times when people get married, sometimes, you know, they don't always stick with their hobbies or other things. And, you know, I'm planning to keep this thing going. Generally, you know, appreciates the podcast and everything I pour into it. And she's been a big supporter from day one. And, you know, she's found out that the G1 finals was on my birthday. And she was like, oh my gosh, are we going to have a G1 party, have all the guys over? I'm like, well, you know, it's a Thursday and it's going to be airing at like, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning. But I mean, we could do something.
I mean, let's hold off and see. I mean, if we get, I mean, actually, is there even a final that you can envision right now where you're like, oh yeah, I got to have a party for that shit?
I mean,
I can't even think of like what is the best case scenario, A block for, you know, A, B versus CD. Like, I don't even know.
I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen, but maybe Okada Ospreay.
I was thinking Okada Ospreay, and that's like a rematch of a rematch of a rematch. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, man.
but yeah, Jen, she supports the crazy wrestling habit, so that this podcast will not be stopping. I might have to find some interesting times to watch everything, but everything will get watched. This podcast will keep going, and we will keep bringing you guys the 3 hours of Ace of podcasts that you love every week.
Hey, and for real, if you guys are so inclined, you know, send us a little donation. Doesn't have to be anything big, but you know, mazel mazel, the big guy's getting married. You know what I'm saying?
Give us a little taste.
Give us a taste, man. But let's move on. So it is August the 2nd as we record, which means, Jeremy, we have to award the July 2022 Wrestler and Match of the Month.
Yeah, and I just want to give you a shout out too for being on top of this one, because dude, the days have been kind of blending in and I didn't even realize, like, oh yeah, August has started. Yeah, you know, it's the beginning of the month, and so yeah, we gotta award these Wrestler of the Month, Match of the Month. So
I always try to stay on top. It's my favorite position. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh. Oh man. So Wrestler of the Month for July 2022 is gonna be the Stone Pit Bull, Tomohiro Ishii. And you know, this was a very tough call for naming the Wrestler of the Month, because, you know, honestly, nobody's really had a blowaway month. Like July was not a blowaway month for anybody. There wasn't this easy, like definite, like, okay, it's this guy, or even there wasn't even like a one or two guys. I mean, we had a handful of guys that we kind of went through looking at the month. You know, we've had G1 this month. There was New Japan Road Tour at the beginning of the month. You had Music City Mayhem this weekend, and also New Japan Strong. So, I mean, there was a ton of New Japan content, ton of matches, but not really a lot of guys that really made their claim this month. So we're going with Tomohiro Ishii, obviously always one of the top performers during G1 Climax season, and keeping that streak going along this year as well. Great matches with Jay White and Tai Chi and Tama Tonga. Some really standout performances there from the B block for Tomohiro Ishii. And with that, the July rest for the month, for me personally, the highest rated match of the tournament, 4.5 for me, him versus Tai Chi. I know a lot of people are not as high on that match as I am, but I thought they went out there, killed it. And so, yeah, Ishii is our wrestler of the month.
You know what's funny is, like, I'm not as high as you on it, but I'm definitely higher than the general consensus on most of the ratings websites. And I feel like the reason it was rated so low is because it was the first night of this year's G1, and people were grading it on that G1 curve. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because, I mean, sometimes you get bangers on the first night, but usually the first night, it's like, all right, good little 4-star.
Let's wait and see what the rest of the tournament bank comes out with, and then it turns out, oh, that's maybe one of the top 2 or 3 best matches of the whole tournament so far. And it's like, let's see what kind of rating people would have been giving this shit on night 9. You know what I'm saying? Like, if that was the main event night 9, people would be like, oh my god, that was a match of the year.
4 3/4, 5.
So you know, and the funny thing is, like, I can't prove this, but I feel like there have been many Julys for many years where Tomohiro Ishii is the winner of the match of the month because he's the top performer in the early, you know, half of a G1. So this is very fitting since G1 is back in, you know, the summer, and you can add 8 guys to the tournament. They're still not going to out wrestle the Stone Pitbull. It doesn't matter. That's
right. The man always goes hard. Like you said in Dallas, the man just loves to smash, and that's what he's been doing in his G1.
So the match of the month, surprisingly, and we're going to give you a review of it later this episode, it does not come from the G1 Climax. If that's not an indictment in July on the state of the G1 Climax, I don't know what to tell you. But we have selected the main event of this past weekend's Music City Mayhem.
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say Showdown, but I think that's a 1980s Jim Crockett promotion pay-per-view. The main event, the death match, the no DQ match between Jon Moxley and El Desperado, and we'll give you the review of that. But trust me, that's the match of the month.
Yeah, like I mentioned, we'll talk about it later. Absolutely crazy match, and yeah, like you said, when you compare what's been happening in the G1. This was a real kind of standout, a spectacle compared to anything that we've gotten from the tournament thus far. So I know with Music City Mayhem being on Fight TV and pay-per-view, I know some of you guys probably haven't ordered it. Maybe you're waiting for it to come up on NJPW World. But go ahead and definitely watch it as soon as you can, whether it's on World or other sites you want to put your pirate hat on, or if you want to go through Fight TV. This match is definitely worth the watch, and it is our July match of the month.
Did you just tell everybody to put their pirate hat on?
I'm just saying, if some people want to sail the 7 seas to get a hold of this matchup, I'm not gonna blame them, because I don't think we, as New Japan World subscribers, we shouldn't have to pay extra to watch another show.
Amen. Amen.
that should be, you know, bundled in our subscription. So totally get it, or just wait till it ends up on World. I forget how long it takes for it to show up. Maybe by the end of this week, maybe. But definitely go on and check that out. So nice. Before we start talking about G1, we gotta talk about a bit of news. You know, normally it might be saved for the news section, but this is a pretty, you know, big monumental news, especially for this show. You know, for years, literally since the show was started in November of 2017, Josh, every so often we get the questions, Why doesn't New Japan have women? When is New Japan going to have women? Why isn't there a women's title in New Japan? Why don't New Japan use Joshi? Every so often, every few months, this question would get thrown at us over and over again, and we would give the same canned answer of why New Japan doesn't have women. But that era is over, because now there's going to be an IWGP Women's Championship. Stardom and NJPW announced the creation of this IWGP Women's Championship, with the first ever title to be decided at the NJPW Stardom show on November 20th. Stardom's English language Twitter account announced the creation of the title and clarified that the belt will be primarily defended on NJPW events, but could also be defended on big Stardom shows. The account also noted that the IWGP Women's title will not replace Stardom's World of Stardom, which is the red belt, and the Wonder of Stardom, which is the white belt, as the promotion's top titles. So, young boy, how are you feeling about this news about an IWGP Women's Championship?
Jeremy, we haven't had a lot of time to discuss this. I don't even think you and I have spent too much time. I think we spent a little time off air discussing it, but I spent a lot of time throughout the week talking to Rich over the past few weeks about this subject. And when the news first started coming out about New Japan and Stardom working together, and then they did that business, the business meeting where they kind of made, they had like Kadani and different people discussing some of the plans for New Japan moving forward. And they started talking about integration with Stardom, just like, having them on the shows and, having a working relationship and featuring them on Strong and everything like that. People got really excited. And that all occurred right when we had our episode with Chris, where it was a long ass show because we were doing a G1 preview. So we didn't even really have a lot of time to really get in depth. I don't want to take up too much time because we have a lot to cover on the show, but I got to tell you, for those of you that don't know or haven't been listening long enough, your boy, the young boy, he likes to dabble in conspiracy theories. I put my tinfoil hat on from time to time. And I got to tell you, this has made my spidey senses go ting-a-linging, okay? I'm pretty concerned from a couple standpoints. Like, I really, really think that this is laying the groundwork for a potential merger, like a full-term merger. And I'm sure there's some people listening thinking like, oh, that would be awesome. The biggest men's promotion in all of Japan, potentially, merging with the largest women's promotion in all of Japan, and we could see it all in one place. And I mean, they're brother and sister promotions. They're owned by the same company. What's bad about that? You know what I mean? My fear, and I have this gimmick on here where I quote unquote don't like women's wrestling, and I play it up because it's kind of a funny running gag in a bit, but it's not actually based in reality. The reality is, even though I don't watch Joshi, I do respect it.
Well, you're breaking kayfabe here.
Yeah, I'm breaking kayfabe here, guys. I'm pulling the curtains back. I genuinely do have the concern that this will be detrimental to Joshi long term. I do not believe personally, and they've had some clarifications come out since the initial reports that seem to indicate that they have every quote unquote intention of keeping the company separate and operating them separately.
Yeah, I believe I believe Kadani came out, had some comments saying that there are no plans to merge Stardom and New Japan.
Okay, I don't believe that at all, bro. Like, I just don't believe it. I think that, okay, here's the first thing. Number one, Stardom is hot right now. They're the fastest growing Japanese promotion in men or women, and they might potentially be the number 2 company in all of Japan right now, just based on the revenue they're drawing and like how they're doing in different buildings. But there's a pretty far gap between the number 2 promotion in Japan and New Japan Pro Wrestling at this point. I do think that they might see how hot that product is and then look at their main moneymaker, which is New Japan, and think like, wow, kind of stagnant, kind of stale. They need something to liven them up. Look at these girls. What if we could take these girls and put them on the bigger platform and generate revenue that way, you know? And I've heard the argument against it being like, well, they'd be shooting themselves in the foot because they're getting rid of the opportunity to have two streams of revenue. And it's like, well, what if they don't believe that women's wrestling has the same kind of growth potential that an integrated company has? And the main example of that might be quote unquote WWE. You look at the market leader worldwide and they're integrated. And I've heard them use the same terminology being like, New Japan is antiquated. They don't have integration. We need to move on with the times. These are things that are making me be like, oh, okay. So we take these girls who are supremely talented and bring them into New Japan. And you know what I mean? Like, it just makes me, it does really, like, why now? They didn't want to do it before, but all of a sudden, when things are getting hot with them and New Japan's kind of stagnant, they want to start showcasing the girls out of the goodness of their heart. Like, I don't think that I don't think this is altruistic or intended to be a cohesive. I think that this is baby steps to integrating the companies.
Yeah, I think another small style, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, are some of the Stardom women will be featured on New Japan Strong tours coming up in the fall. It's like, all right, so you're now integrating them into, you know, the canon and New Japan Strong. I know that's kind of a separate product and show from the, you know, main New Japan product, but it's still New Japan Pro Wrestling. These women are going to be wrestling under that banner. This title is going to be defending probably a lot on these Strong tours. They're going to bring a lot of women to America and defend the title here. So yeah, I mean, kind of starting off there, I think that could easily kind of snowball into them being featured more and more on New Japan until a merger happens.
Now, ultimately, if it does work out to be exactly what they're claiming it's going to be, just a partnership where they're showcasing, you know, the talents of both companies on each other's shows, and it's a true partnership, I'm all for that. I'm for that all day. Like, I love having the Stardom girls on the shows, and I wouldn't even be opposed to having the men go work Stardom in some capacity. We've seen that in several of the other Joshi promotions as well. So, I mean, that would be cool. But I don't know, man. I don't usually take a firm stance on things like this. I'm usually the like, let's see it, let it play out guy. I think that they're going to move forward with this. I really, really do. The other thing too is this integration of an IWGP women's title. Okay, you could say that this is just going to be like a bridging the gap kind of showcase title. It's going to be like the number 3 title, or, you know, like they're claiming it's going to be below the red and the white belt. But for a lot of fans, because it has IWGP on it, especially if they're New Japan fans, which is obviously the larger platform worldwide, especially for Western audiences, they're going to look at that. They're going to think that's the top title, period.
Yeah.
You know, and I know they can claim and be like, well, it's not going to replace the red and the white belt, but it's like, to really establish it, who do you see them putting that on? Because I think they're going to put it on like a Julia or Mayu Iwatani.
Well, we have that question asked by MJ Does PR. Well, first he said, the question is for young boys specifically, does the W in IWGP now stand for women?
Women.
And then he said, who would you like to see as the inaugural IWGP women's champion?
Well, I don't follow Stardom like that, so I don't even have enough knowledge to tell you who should or shouldn't. That'd probably be a great question for One Nation Radio, which I think they recorded last night. I haven't gotten a chance to listen to this week's episode.
Yeah,
but
I mean, for me, I think Mayu Iwatani would probably be the person I would put it on. I think she is the most recognizable Stardom Joshi wrestler across the brands, Western and New Japan. I think, you know, she's kind of like the Tanahashi, so to speak, of Stardom. Right. And I don't think she's obviously going to always be a top person, but I don't think she's getting pushed super hard right now in Stardom. So I think putting the belt on her, she's a top star. She's a crossover. People know her name. She's competed here in the States a lot. I think that'd be the most recognizable and probably the most valued name probably at this point to put it on.
Let me give you an example why I'm opposed to this entire notion, right? let's assume in an alternate universe, New Japan had a partnership with WWE. And WWE, being the larger promotion, says we're going to start showcasing, doing talent trades and having New Japan show up on our shows. And we're going to institute a WWE International Championship that will be contested under New Japan rules by the New Japan wrestlers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to be wondering to yourself, well, why can't we bring over the Never title or the IWGP US title or the World title? And they're like, well, we have to put our own branding on it and have it established under, the bigger platform. Like that already, that like is just, doesn't that just set off a lot of like alarm bells right then and there?
Yeah.
That is the same thing that is happening here. They have a lot of titles in Stardom. They got the SWA belt, the red, the white. They got a bunch of other rainbow belts. I watched a little Stardom. They got a bunch of belts. They're all different
tags,
colors.
They got trios.
They got a bunch of belts.
High speed.
I don't understand. Yeah, the high speed belt. I don't understand why they couldn't bring over one of those belts or a multitude of those belts on various shows to establish those belts as being representative in New Japan. They don't need an IWGP title. My feeling, this belt will be owned by New Japan. Hypothetically, what is stopping New Japan from maybe after this talent partnership, maybe they start their own women's division, either with or without Stardom, because they got a belt now.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a precedent. What's stopping them from gobbling up other girls, internationally or on the scene? And I'm sure there's some of you who are wondering and listening, being like, well, how's that a bad thing? Well, I'm sure it's not a bad thing for the girls that would come and work there, of course. But the reality is all the complaints that everybody has in the States about AEW and WWE and their treatment of women and their showcase of women and how they're utilized, that is completely non-existent when it comes to Joshi, unless you kill Joshi. When you kill Joshi, they just become another minor, part of the show, like the juniors, maybe less than. And that's my concern. I think that hypothetically, if they were to maybe eat up Stardom, they could wind up firing half the roster that they don't need, keep the ones they want, use the rest of them as freelancers if they really wanted to. And then the market leader Joshi's dead. And then we're back to the late 90s when JWA went out of business.
Yeah.
All Japan Women's.
And I'm glad you brought up juniors, because we had a question here from Barry Walsh. He says, with the announcement of an IWGP women's title for Stardom that will feature on New Japan shows, is this a concern for the juniors? I doubt they will just add a match or two and will cut something, and I doubt it will be the heavyweights. So, Rory, will this mean reduced time for the junior division?
Well, the junior division isn't even really showcased that much altogether. So I wouldn't say yes, because, at most there's 2 junior matches on the show. No, it would probably mean on a bigger card, you might get one less dad/Lions tag.
Yeah.
Which is probably a good thing. That's a net positive. Again, I'm in favor of the partnership all day, but I don't believe for a minute that they're just doing this to get more, FaceTime and everything for the women. I think that this is to eventually merge them into New Japan. And for anyone that thinks I'm wrong, look at all the other times when they've been like, oh, the U.S. title is just going to be our belt in the United States. We're going to tour all over with Ring of Honor. It's going to be how we market ourselves over there. That never happened. Oh, the Never title is just for the young and up and comers. Think of it like NXT. That never happened. A lot of the things they say are going to happen in this company don't ever end up coming true, regardless of best intentions. What's to keep this from being the same thing? Listen, I know a lot of people think I'm probably being too skeptical here, but I think I'm ahead. And I don't usually take a firm stance like this on these types of subjects, but don't be surprised if within a year we have a full-fledged working women's division. Now, if Joshi can continue to thrive and survive in the midst of that, cool. But if it means the death of Stardom, which I think it could mean, Stardom gets merged in, Stardom becomes a sub-brand, and pretty much just utilized as like a farm league for New Japan, I don't think that's a good thing at all.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think they're going to do what's best for business. And so if they start looking at those numbers, looking at the books, and are like, it probably makes more sense, let's just merge this thing, then that's what they're going to do. But also, I think we're still a little ways away from that. Also, we'll continue to monitor the story. There'll probably be moves happening towards this direction, so we'll keep an eye on it and see what happens.
Most of that theorizing is the thoughts of one Joshua Smith and not Jeremy Donovan.
And last thing here before we go to G1, they did release a press release on Saturday about the November 20th show. It was revealed the event will be titled Historic Crossover. It was also announced that there will be mixed tag matches on the show, with mixed tag matches, championship action, and more. Besides, the top flight in both male and female wrestling will meet in Ariake, and the event title reflects just that. And that comes from NJPW1972.com. Fan club members will be able to purchase tickets beginning on August 18th. Tickets will go on sale to the general public beginning September 23rd. The event will take place from the Ariake Arena in Ariake, Tokyo, Japan. The venue was built for the 2020 Olympics and served as the venue for volleyball competitions. Its capacity for volleyball is listed as 12,000 fans. So it'll be interesting to see what the setup will be for this New Japan Stardom show.
Well, either way, they could just lie about the numbers like they do in WWE. So, 12,000. Oh, we did 23K,
Yeah.
It's not like New Japan doesn't have a history of that. Some of those dome shows, they'd be like 65,000 people. It's like, dog, it's not 65,000. Like, it's impossible.
The math is not mathing. All right, now let's talk about G1 Climax 32. We're about the halfway point into the tournament. So normally when we get to this point in the tournament, we kind of go block by block, talk about each competitor, the matches they've had. So it's going to be a little bit different here with the 4 blocks. So we're going to go through each of the 4 blocks. And, some guys didn't wrestle. So we might just kind of gloss over some of the guys who haven't wrestled, maybe just give a quick thoughts. But we'll talk about the guys who did wrestle over these last few nights, the matches that happened between nights 7 through 10. And, give our thoughts on all that stuff.
And let's do this, Jeremy, because you and I, we don't have the best track record of this. When we've already discussed the match, let's not, and then we come back, like, for instance, we're at to talk about Okada Fale. When we get down to Fale, we don't have to continue to add on to the thoughts of it. Let's clear it the first time. And I'm not saying that for you. I'm saying that for me. I've got this bad tendency. All right, well, I know we talked about this, but I want to throw another, let's move on.
All right, so we'll start with the A block. So as of this recording, leading the A block is the Rainmaker, Kazuchika Okada, with 6 points. So he only had 1 match in this past stretch of shows, and that was on night 9, where he defeated Bad Luck Fale 11 minutes and 52 seconds.
I don't have too much to really say about this particular match. The one thing I will kind of throw out there, and it's not a new thought, Fale, probably his best opponent in New Japan. If it's not Tanahashi, it probably is Okada. He just tends to work harder when it's Okada, and they have really good chemistry with one another. And I didn't think this match was by any means like a great match, but it was pretty good. And Fale worked hard, and Okada did his best to make him look as good as possible. And I liked the finish too with the
sit out money clip,
the new modified version of the money clip, where he just kind of got him out of there quick with that at the end.
Yeah, I enjoyed this match a lot. This was probably one of the better Fale's matches I've seen in a while. Like you mentioned, him and Okada have great chemistry together. I mean, it's kind of pro wrestling 101. The big guy's outpowering the smaller guy. The smaller guy has to use speed. The small guy also wants to show his strength and try to, slam the bigger guy, which Okada did eventually. So it's kind of this pro wrestling 101 basic tropes with the bigger heel and the smaller baby face. And Yeah, it was to me, I think it was a very entertaining match, very good back and forth to here. Like I said, Fale always works hard with Okada. And then, like we mentioned last week, with Okada now doing that, that modified version of the money clip, looked a lot more painful, and was able to apply that on Fale, get Fale out of there. And so, yeah, I enjoy this quite a bit.
The other thing, too, with Okada leading the block, we're starting to see how everything's going to shake out with these smaller modified, fields. And Okada is undefeated at this point. And if he wins his next match, that will, in essence, eliminate probably about half the field, because most of these guys only have, like, say, 2 points. I know not all of them have been as active, but once Okada goes 4-0, everybody that has 2 losses that's already lost to him, they lose all their tiebreakers. They're done. Anybody that has 3 losses, they're done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to, if you were anticipating a possibility of Okada losing to keep people alive and keep things going, whoever he wrestles next, that's a good person to pick possibly.
Yeah.
Which I think it's Tom Lawler, right?
I think so. Let me scroll down here to the schedule, see if I can see who is next. If he wrestles in this next coming up week.
Yeah, so and that's the hard part.
No, his next person is Jonah. On my wedding day, August 7th.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, that's one to keep in mind. But Okada for sure, just generally speaking about the block, I mean, it's no surprise to anybody that he's outperforming, in my opinion, everybody in the block. But I do think it's a little surprising how wide the margin is, because this monster block is not monstering the way I thought it was going to monster, bro.
Dude, I was kind of a little hesitant on this block. A lot of people were getting excited. New Japan was promoting, monster block. And, Imp and I, a couple weeks ago, had talked about, it'd be cool to have a block of, beefy guys. You have like Cobb and Shingo and some of these other like bigger guys. And what they did here, I mean, they put some big guys in here, but I'm not quite sure if this was the best combination of the big guys.
Well, it's a style thing. It's like, okay, big, beefy monster dudes wrestling each other. I'm all about that. That's what wrestling's built on. But there's this other thing where it's like they need to hit each other hard, and they need to be intense, and they need to have wars, and they need to be suplexing the fuck out of each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And these matches are short. They're not like, living up to what I thought it was going to be. And so, yeah, I mean, it's for anybody that was out there that looked at that A block and thought, I don't know. You were right. And all of us who were excited about it, we were probably wrong.
So that's pretty much it for Okada. Like you mentioned, leading the block, and somebody's gonna need to knock him off quickly.
But he's already, I mean, he's leading the block easily, the MVP. He gave Yano his best match, he gave Cobb his best match, he gave Fale his best match, and I'm not gonna be surprised if the same is said of Lawler, Archer, and Jonah.
Yeah. Let's look at the next guy here. Bad Luck Fale's in with 4 points. So on night 7, he defeated Toru Yano 5 minutes 36 seconds, like we mentioned. On night 9, he lost to Okada.
Yeah, so night 7, the match with Yano was not good. It was short. There was a lot of shenanigans. The thing is, Fale went into that match with a abysmal record against Yano. Yano always outsmarts him and always beats him. And on this night, Fale had him too much scouted and was able to give him a taste of his own medicine, gave him a low blow and a giant monster roll up. And when a big man like that rolls you up, there's not much you can do about it. But this was a pretty bad match on a pretty bad G1 night.
Yeah, this was, like I said, not great, pretty rough. I mean, it's a typical Fale Yano match for all shenanigans and Yano trying to, do his tricks on Fale. But like you mentioned, Fale, he spent a lot of time in the Fale dojo, rewatching all the tapes against him and Yano, and finally figured out the formula. Like you mentioned, was able to use the schoolboy on Yano to get the win there and go. He went into that Okada match with a pretty good record, and so he had 4 points going into the Okada match. And so, eat the L there and come in, as of right now, kind of second place with 4 points.
So next up, we have Jeff Cobb. He is sitting at 4 points. On night 9, he defeated Lance Archer at 11 minutes, 37 seconds with a tour of the islands. And I got to tell you, this match was okay, but considering the two principals involved, I thought it was going to be a lot better. And it was a lot more sluggish and kind of awkward than I had anticipated.
Oh, I enjoyed this match a ton, dude, and so was the crowd. The crowd was like oohing and awing for like every big move these guys were doing, which made the match even more enjoyable. I mean, these guys were doing big moves to each other. Archer did this big like choke slam to Cobb in the ring and on the apron. Cobb was muscling Archer around as well, and these guys were doing some pretty big moves to each other. Cobb is not a guy that really takes a lot of big bumps just because he's such a monster, and he's a strong guy in matches. But he was taking a lot of bumps here for Archer, and Archer was doing some bumps here for Cobb. And yeah, I thought this was a very enjoyable, very hard hitting, fun matchup.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call it not fun. It was the opener of that night, I believe, and it was definitely fun. And everything you're saying is true. It's just, I don't know, considering like the level of G1 matches both of these guys have had in the past, I was hoping for something a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And I did think that the size differential was a little just kind of cumbersome and awkward. Like, they worked hard, they took big bumps, they did crazy stuff, but there was like a lot of just kind of weird, like, I mean, look at their bodies. Like, Cobb is like short and stocky, and Archer is long and tall, and like there was a lot of moves where it was like, I mean, it was definitely fun, and the crowd was definitely into it. Not obviously they're into it because both these guys are over, but I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know. I probably would have gone like 3.25 on this.
I think I went 3.5. But yeah, Archer. You had Archer doing the cannonball dive off the apron, hits Cobb.
That part, he hit him in the Young Lion. That was tight.
I think it was Nakashima. Oh, Archer's doing the rope walk, and Cobb pulls him off into the spin cycle suplex. Great spot.
That was cool.
Yeah. There's so many cool spots like that. Archer hitting the pounce on Cobb.
And of course, at the end, Cobb hit him with the Tour of the Islands, which, like, for him to even get him up was pretty wild.
Yeah, so yeah, really fun matchup, and this was a very important win here for Jeff Cobb, because like you mentioned, he's already lost to Okada. So the more Okada wins and the more he loses, definitely, decreases his chances of winning this block. So he pretty much has to win every match going forward to stay alive here. So this was a very important matchup for him to win.
Nice. So behind him, we've got the rest of the block. Everybody else is tied with 2. Some people did more active than others, but we got Yano, and on night 7 we already talked about him losing to Balak Fale, and then on night 10 he was defeated by Filthy Tom Lawler, 10 minutes and 13 seconds.
Yeah, so this was a very important match for Filthy Tom. He was coming in this match 0-2. Cut a very impassioned promo about some of the hardships that he's been experiencing. His mother had to go in the hospital and a couple other stuff like that. He's been having a really rough time and eating some losses here in the G1. And so it's kind of a make or break matchup for him. And this is a match, if you listen to the Filthy 4 Daily Show of him and Brian Alvarez, he's been looking forward to wrestling Toru Yano. And he said, initially he said he was going to try and make Yano wrestle, because we all know Yano has that collegiate, amateur wrestling background. Filthy Tom, former MMA fighter, former amateur wrestler in his own rights, and
former strong open weight champion.
Yeah, and so his whole plan, he was going to make Yano wrestle. But I listened to Filthy 4 today, and he's like, no, Alvarez was like, Tom, you can't out wrestle Yano. Like, you're down 2 points. Like, you've already tried, being the badass MMA fighter 2 times. It hasn't worked. You need to out Yano.
That is what he did.
Yeah, and that's what we saw here. Match started off with a funny DVD exchange. Filthy Tom was trying to exchange Sister Act 1 and 2 on DVD for Yano's DVD. And Yano
gave him the DVD.
He tried to finesse this man. He opened the case up. It was empty.
Oh, I mean just the case. He gave him the DVD case.
Yeah.
Luckily, there wasn't any powder or gimmick in it, but yeah, he finessed the man. He gave him the case. There was no DVD in it, and he got Sister Act 1 and 2, which are collectibles.
Yeah.
over in Japan, they're all like still on DVDs, like they don't stream like we do. So.
Right? Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely was able to get Yano to wrestle quite a bit, though. Like they really showcased a lot of the like grappling and technical acumen in the early parts of the match, which, for those of you that might not have been as familiar with that aspect of Yano's like career, he is a very accomplished technical wrestler. But I think what most people are going to remember is like all the shenanigans with the multiple pants that everybody was wearing in this match.
Yeah, Filthy Tom had a couple different pairs of the short shorts on. We saw the duct tape.
And so did Yano.
Yeah, and so did Yano. Yeah, we saw the duct tape come out. He taped up Royce Isaacs to the outside to the barricades. And then, of course, towards the end here, the ref was down and Yano was going for his signature low blow. But Filthy Tom came prepared, had a cup on, was able to, deflect the low blow, and was able to hit the nasty knee on the brain and put Yano out to get the win.
Yep, and that's the first utilization of that move that we've seen from Tom Lawlor in Japan proper. So, and that's a big one for him because he was already down 2 losses in the tournament. And as we discussed, like if you get down to 3, you're pretty much done. Yano, on the other hand, that was his 3rd loss. So that pretty much eliminated him from the block. So thank you, Tom Lawlor.
Yeah. And, I expect the same with Yano just going forward. A lot of shenanigans. He'll probably have, everybody's worst match maybe in this block. Maybe Fale could be a second to that. But Yano's going to Yano.
The next guy we have to discuss, Jonah. He's sitting at 2 points on night 8. He came into a pretty big match with Tom Lawlor, and he was able to defeat Tom 11 minutes, 32 seconds. This is a match between arguably the 2 most dominant forces in New Japan Strong meeting in one-on-one competition for the first time.
Yeah, and they've already kind of started doing a little like Team Filthy, TMDK feud on Strong, and then also on the undercards leading up to this, there was a lot of tags where it was Tom and Isaacs against Jonah and Bad Dude Tito. So this match kind of had a lot of build to it, and I enjoy this quite a bit. Kind of similar formula to that Okada Fale match I was talking about earlier, where you have the smaller competitor in the match is trying to outpace the bigger guy. Tom, he's trying to use a submission game. He's trying to choke Jonah out. He's trying to take the leg out. He targeted Jonah's leg and, was trying to slow him down that way. But this Jonah, man, he was too big. He was too strong. He was outpowering Tom at every corner. And it came down to the end where he hit that big torpedo splash. 1, 2, 3, put Filthy Tom away.
Yeah, and that was an interesting one from Jonah, just because he lost his first match to Yano. We talked about during the preview, he was going to have a long period of inactivity, which I think was the longest stretch in the whole tournament, like 11 or 12 nights. So, for him to kind of rebound from a big loss there and then pick up the big win against Tom Lawlor, puts him, gives him a lot of forward momentum. And he's coming up against Okada. Okada's streaking 3-0, undefeated. And Jonah still has, at this point, 4 matches. We're halfway through the tournament, but he still has 4 matches left to go. Like, he's probably the most well-rested individual of the entire tournament. And he's one of the largest monsters in the entire block. So, like, I'm not saying we'll get to the preview, but, like, I think that Okada's got a big task in front of him. If Okada beats Jonah, it's pretty much smooth sailing for the most part. I mean, yes, he still needs to win the rest of his matches, but like he'll have effectively eliminated a lot of the field. But if Jonah beats him, that puts Jonah in very, very real contention to win the A block from just a mathematical standpoint.
Yeah, that'll put him in a very good position. And I gotta say, with Jonah and with Filthy Tom, both these guys have been getting over big time with the crowds. Jonah, just his size and his power, like I mentioned, in a non-vocal crowd, he's getting a ton of oohs and ahs every time he wrestles, hits these big moves, especially that big torpedo splash. It was the first time I believe he did it in Japan, and the crowd, big ooh and ah for that when he jumped off the top rope and landed on Filthy Tom. So yeah, this was a kind of a rugged kind of match here with Jonah with the big power moves, the big strikes, Tom going for the submissions. But a really good matchup here. Yeah, Jonah gets the win.
Yeah, pretty awesome. We've already discussed the rest of the A block matches, but just very quickly, Lance Archer, he's sitting at 2 points. And at this point, he has a win over Fale, no, a loss to Fale, a loss to Cobb, and then a win over Tom Lawler. He still has 3 matches to go. So he's right on that cusp of basically needing to win everything else because he already has 2 losses. One more loss, and he's pretty much done. And he still has Okada, Yano, and Jonah to go. And Okada's his final opponent on the last night. So I would say probably just considering his status with AEW and the way they booked him so far, he's probably going to beat Yano, probably going to beat Jonah, and then maybe be alive on that last night going against Okada.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
And potentially it could be a situation where if he beats Okada, he wins. They could also do a situation where if he beats Okada, Jonah gets through, depending on the math. So that's kind of what I'm looking at there, you know?
Yeah. Also, Lance Archer was on commentary on today's show for night 10. And I thought he did a great job, him and Kevin Kelly. I thought he added a lot to the commentary.
Yeah, it was very clear that Archer's not actively keeping up with the promotion. There's a lot of questions he had, but they weren't bad questions by any means. Like, they were like smart, poignant things that like someone who maybe also is new to the product or hasn't been keeping as close attention, they'd probably be wondering the same thing. So it kind of helped Kevin fill in those gaps, which I thought was kind of a nice touch and sort of, you know, authentic. It was genuine, you know?
Yeah.
And then finally, we got Tom Lawler. He is also at 2 points. He's got a loss to Jonah, lost to Archer, and then he beat Yano. And he still has Okada, Cobb, Fale on the docket. He's another guy that's sort of on that chopping block where with one more loss, he's done. And that Okada, he is one of the few guys with 2 points that still has Okada on the horizon. And a win over Okada could turn his whole fortunes around.
Yeah, I know. I'm starting to think he is going to beat Okada just with kind of the slow start that he had, and I think he's going to pick up some momentum here. I think he's going to be one of the guys that can hold off Okada here.
So what are you thinking? Lawler and Jonah beat Okada, and then he's, 3-2 going against Archer?
Yeah.
You think that? I'm not so sure about that.
I mean, I don't know. It could. If you want,
it's so hard to predict these small blocks.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make
now that we're seeing it like fold out, you just don't know.
Right. I think if you want to make it interesting, I think that's the way to do it. So Okada's on a hot streak right now. Then you have him slow down. I mean, Jonah, he can get hurt in the Jonah match, which can open up things for Tom to beat him. Then he comes into that Archer match hurt and down 2 losses, and then it really makes you question whether or not he can beat Archer.
I really don't know where they're going, but if that's exactly what happens, you heard it here first from Jeremy Donovan.
And Philly Tom, he was also on commentary. I believe that was on night 9. I thought he did a great job as well on commentary. And we had a question here from
real quick before we get to the question. There's a few times where he started to lose his voice mid-show, and I swear to God, he sounded like Don Callis. Because I sometimes I watch portions of the show while I'm like working, right? So I'm not always actively looking at it, and I hear him talking, and then I look over and I'm like Don, and it's like, oh no, it's filthy, but like he just sounds like Don in this moment, and then it passes. He like clears his throat, and then he's himself again.
Man, I miss Don Callis on New Japan commentary. We had a question here from Barry Walsh, who said, on Filthy Tom's booking in the G1 so far, does it make Strong as a product look bad or hard to take seriously when the guy who only lost one one-on-one match in a whole year loses his first 2 singles appearances on the main roster?
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody's under the illusion that New Japan Strong is seen as equal to New Japan. How many guys from New Japan that are big stars have ever come over and actually dropped a pinfall loss to anybody from New Japan Strong? Nobody. Jay White, Ishii, like most of those guys, they don't come over and lose.
I think Suzuki's probably the only guy
Maybe he did. I don't know.
Yeah, he lost. Didn't he lose to Brody
Dickinson?
King? The Brody King.
Yeah, but that wasn't on New Japan Strong. That was on the pay-per-view.
Well, still part of Strong.
It's not. It's not. It's truly not part of Strong. That's a New Japan proper pay-per-view in the US.
Yeah, I guess that's true, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the other thing too is like you have to also take into consideration that these are all completely new opponents that he's never faced. It's the G1. It's a type of tournament that he's never competed in, and neither has Jonah, and both of them 8 pinfall losses. Plus, let's not kid ourselves. Who goes undefeated in the G1 period? And it's like, yeah, his booking hasn't been great so far, but you got to let it play out. It's kind of early days. Did anybody think that Tom Lawler coming into this tournament was going to just wipe the floor with the monster block when he's the smallest guy in the monster block? Like, let's get real. That's not what his purpose is here, like, at all. I do think that he's going to break out from this tournament and make a name for himself and have an incredible showing. But, like, Dave, I think that he's going to be, like, a serious, credible, major threat.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as a New Japan Strong viewer, of course, I would love to see him book strong and, you know, get some more wins earlier on. But like you mentioned, we still got several more matches to go for him, and you mentioned he's the smallest guy in this monster block. And again, if you look at the profiles too of some of the newer guys, like Tom Lawler doesn't really have a huge wrestling profile to the quote-unquote, say, casual fan.
Right.
If you don't watch MLW, if you haven't been watching New Japan Strong, you might not be really familiar with Tom's work versus a guy like Jonah, who's been on WWE, NXT, who's had that bigger, wider view, even being on Impact. You know, he's had more exposure, I would say, to the quote-unquote casual fan. And to New Japan eyes, we know how they love former WWE people. So the fact that Jonah is already starting to pick up some more wins here and being probably maybe looking stronger totally makes sense in my eyes.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So let's move on quickly to the B block, where we start off with the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, the point leader, undefeated, 6 points, 3-0, Jay White, and he was successful on night 9 as he defeated fellow Bullet Club member Chase Owens, 13 minutes and 12 seconds.
Yeah, so there was a lot of build to this matchup on the undercards. These guys were having miscommunications and a lot of the multi-man tag matches. And then when this match started, it was the normal Bullet Club trope of one guy wanted the other guy to lay down for the other. So in this situation, Jay wanted Chase to lay down for him, but he was going to pay Chase. They had made an agreement that Jay was going to give him, a certain amount of money to, do the job and lay down and, have Jay move on. And so, Jay, he pulls out the envelope, hands it over to Chase, and Chase is like, okay. And he's like, let me count it. Jay like, no. Like, don't worry about it. It's all in there. It's all in there. He grabs the envelope. He gives it to the ring announcer. He's like, we're good. It's all in there, brother. It's good. Let's do his plan. Lay down. And Chase is like, okay. Then he rolls out. He powders. He's like, gets the envelope, pulls it out. There's a bill in there, a real bill. Pulls it out again, another real bill. And then the blanks started coming out. A bunch of blank paper. This man, Jay White, was trying to finesse. He loaded the envelope with a bunch of just blank paper. And Chase Owens was not about that. And so, big disagreement there, big argument. And, Gale's trying to play the peacekeeper out on the outside. And then these guys go on to have a match. At points, Jay was trying to hold back a little bit, but then they would get frustrated with each other, hit some big spots. Chase was busting out, C triggers and styles clashes to get near falls, and ended up having a pretty good back and forth match here. Jay able to hit him eventually with the Blade Runner and get the win.
Yeah, the match actually ended up being pretty good after the Bullet Club, divisional, shenanigans in the early part, which they tend to do in most Bullet Club matches. So you just kind of have to get used to it, I guess.
Yeah.
But they really like put Chase in a position to where like he really pushed Jay to his limits and had him in trouble and was moments away from defeating Jay White. So it's like, man, someone likes Chase Owens. Like someone in that office really likes this guy because they've done so much for him over the past couple of years to really like push him forward. And this is a moment where they made him look like a not like a true title contender, but like someone that like you just never know on any given night he might have the goods. And that's kind of the message they put here. Also, actually I'm mistaken. I was gonna say for some reason I was gonna say Tangaloa was on commentary, but that was for Music City Mayhem. Yeah. But they were like, who was on commentary for that show? Was that Tom Lawler?
Yeah, I think that was Tom.
Yeah, he was like, man, you don't want to, like, if I'm Jay White, I don't ever want to cross this dude ever again because, like, you know, he might put your title in jeopardy. You just never know.
Yeah, and Gato, of course, cracking me up on the outside as well, trying to keep the peace.
Well, also, like, trying to keep the peace, but also trying to keep Jay White as champion. And he was like, there's a point where, like, he was getting ready to put Jay up in the package pile driver, and he's like, no, Chase, no.
He's like, the money's in the back. The money's in the back. I promise.
We have the money. We have it. I'll get it.
It's in the back.
No. So that was even in the beginning when he like laid down and like Jay's like, no, I see how you're laying. Like, I'm gonna go to pin you. You're gonna roll me up. You're gonna try to win. Like, no. And then like he's like, I'm laying down. He's like, you're not laying down right. He's like, I'm laying down. He's like, Gato, he's not laying down right.
He's like, follow the plan, champ. Follow the plan.
Yeah, the whole thing was pretty funny, actually.
God. Yeah.
Now, Jay is undefeated, right? And he is in a very similar situation to Okada. 3 wins, and he has Taichi, Tangaloa, and Okan coming up. His next match is scheduled to be against Okan here in the next few days. So, very similar situation that I laid out there, where it's like, anybody that has 2 losses is pretty close to being on the chopping block. Anybody that already has 3 is probably done. And anybody with 2 and has also lost to him, they're like, if he wins his next match, they're essentially done.
Mm-hmm. And like I predicted on the preview show, I think he's going to go undefeated in the whole block. And as of right now, that's happening. But again, it could be a similar situation with Okada. If they want to create drama in the closing stretch, you could have him eat a loss of 2 guys, especially if you want to set up some fall tile defenses. So you mentioned he has Okan next, and we'll talk about Okan a little bit later, but he is at the bottom of the block, and he's in that spot you mentioned where he has 2 losses, and so Okan really needs to get on the board. So if Okan were to lose to Jay White, that would be pretty detrimental to the future of his tournament here, and he'd pretty much be out. And if Jay beats him, I think it's pretty clear that Jay's probably just going to go all the way and be undefeated, or maybe you have Tama Tonga give him that 1 loss towards the end there, maybe. But I think Jay is definitely winning this block.
Well, you know, normally if someone is even threatening to go undefeated in a block, you normally need to have someone that kind of poses the potential risk to, you know, upsetting them and keeping them out of contention. And I mean, I think we're looking at Tama Tonga there. Like, yeah, he took a loss to Ishii, but he's the guy he's facing at the end of the block. He's, you know, he has 4 points at this point. So you might be right there. Like, I'm not saying Jay White's for sure going to go undefeated, but if he were, he needs to have a credible threat going into the final nights, which means Tama Tonga needs to, because at this point, there's almost nobody else in the block that could reasonably be that guy to defeat him, except, and by defeat him, I mean pass him in the points total. The only 2 guys that really look like they could do that in my book right now are pretty much Taichi and Tama Tonga. Taichi has been highly inactive in this block. He still has 4 matches to go, and that kind of keeps things open for him. But Tama Tonga is the only guy that has him still down the line and also has enough mathematical points to potentially also be the person to upset him and even maybe be the person to pass him himself. So
right, and it's also a blood feud as well. There's a lot of Bullet Club story surrounding Jay kicking Tama out of Bullet Club, so you can get kind of a big matchup there because they haven't really had a match since Jay booted him out of the Bullet Club. So this could be the big first time matchup between these two, and Tama could pull the upset here.
But I think a lot of the speculation had been, well, Tama could be the guy to upset him on the final night and allow someone else to pass through. But the way it's going with Chase and Okan and Sonata and Ishii, I'm not really convinced that any of those guys could be the man to pass, to be the one who gets the bye based on Tama Tonga beating him.
Yeah.
At this point, the only two people that and of course I haven't done the perfect math, but it looks like it's probably either Taichi or Tama Tonga. And most likely, based on the booking, I'm just going to guess, expect Tama Tonga to be winning most of his matches from here on out to be plausible to potentially defeat Jay.
Yeah. So moving on to the next guy, Cole Skull Sonata. He has 4 points on night 8. He defeated the Great Okan 16 minutes 35 seconds. On night 10, he lost to Tama Tonga 16 minutes and 28 seconds.
Sonata is doing what Sonata does in these situations, especially in recent years. He's having probably what I would call better than expected matches, but nothing that's truly great and nothing that truly gets me excited. If you put him in there with the right opponent, like a Zack Sabre Jr., someone he has a proven track record of chemistry, then there's usually something there. But with these guys, the matches were fine. He definitely busts out all the big, spots that you get excited for. But there was nothing for me to really, truly invest in when it comes to Sonata at all. And I mean, I can't even think of too many things to really differentiate between these matches. They went roughly the same amount. Sonata won against Okan. He lost against Tama Tonga. There was a lot of great near falls with the Cold Skull and with the O'Connor roll and all that stuff. But I don't know. And even the moonsault. But I really do feel like when people talk about it's not all just about wrestling, there has to be character work. Well, that's never been more apparent when it comes to a guy like Sonata. And I mean, it's 2022 and we're talking about this, not 2017. It's been 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I think this guy came in 2016. So, that's how long we've been talking about him going into the next gear and the next level. And so,
well, I think it's this thing that we've been saying. It's Sonata wrestles up to the level of who he's in there with. So if he's in there with a Zack Sabre Jr., a Will Ospreay, a Kazuchika Okada, he's going to give you a 4-star plus match. He's going to have a really great match that people are talking about. But then you put him in there with a Great Okan, a Tama Tonga, guys that are more on that mid-card level. That's the kind of effort he's going to put out. He's not going to go out of his way to try and elevate these guys or to have a match of the night or match of the year contender. He's going to kind of wrestle to their levels. And like you mentioned, it'll be a good match, but it's not always something you can sink your teeth into or get excited about. The Great Okan match, I thought it was a great kind of showcase for Okan's grappling. Like we mentioned, Sonata showcases the grappling normally against Zack Sabre Jr., so I thought they had a lot of great grappling in that match and kind of highlighted some of Okan's strengths, but in the end, Sonata was able to get the win there. In the Tama Tonga match, both of those guys are known for being, really fast and having, great athletic encounters and stuff like that. So a lot of great, some of the speed spots there, some of the counters. There was a catch into, was it the catch into the Cold Skull?
Yeah, he went for a gun stun and he caught it into a Cold Skull neck crank, which was pretty crazy. That was kind of the story of the match. Tama Tonga continuously trying to catch him with the gun stun and just not being able to get it until finally he did get it. But it took 4 attempts before it actually landed.
Yeah. And Sonata, he does have 4 points, but he's already lost to Jay White, so that definitely lowers his chance. That kind of puts him in that Jeff Cobb position where he's got to start, really running up some wins here if he wants a shot at doing it. But I just feel like he's kind of lukewarm right now, coming off of the orbital bone injury, and I just have a hard time seeing him be a guy that's going to be alive towards the end or potentially win this block.
I think we're at the point where we're already starting to see Sonata slowly drift down the card and get passed up. Yeah. I think that, sometimes things like that happen and it's not so apparent until you look back, and it's more like a hindsight thing, sort of like what Juice was like a few years ago, or even Goto. But I think we're there with Sonata. I think that there have been enough guys that come into the company that have already surpassed him. And for everyone that was wondering for when's his moment coming and when's his time in the sun, I think that sun has already set and we're past it.
Yeah.
And as far as his standing, he's 2-2 and he's got 2 more matches to go. He needs to win both of them, and he needs Jay White to lose three matches.
Yeah, 3, yeah.
So Sonata is essentially done.
Yeah,
and that's why I'm like, anyone that has 2 losses and has already lost to Jay, they're pretty much done.
Yeah,
because anyone who's in that position needs the undefeated guy to lose all 3,
and Jay is not losing 3.
Right. So Sonata's already out of there.
Yeah.
And so is Chase, and so is Ishii.
Yeah. So then also with 4 points, we got Tama Tonga on night 7. He lost to Tomohiro Ishii, 20 minutes, 7 seconds, the main event, Cork and Hall. Then, like we mentioned, on night 10, he was able to defeat Sonata.
Yeah, I mean, we already kind of covered the Sonata win. I think that just from an optics standpoint, the Sonata win was very important because we haven't seen him in a G1 like this beating this many top contenders before. We've seen him perform on a high level, but picking up the W's is what matters in this kind of kayfabe. And so that was a big thing. And then the Ishii match, Ishii's in the past been one of Tama Tonga's best opponents, and so far in this tournament, I think I haven't been individually rating these like you have, but I think that was probably Tama Tonga's best match of the tournament so far. I think I was close to 4 stars on it, and it probably was one of the reasons we gave Ishii Wrestler of the Month.
Yeah, I went 4 stars on that matchup as well. Cork and Hall had a lot of great energy. The crowd was really into that matchup, and just kind of scrolling back through my ratings here, I do think that is the highest rated Tama Tonga match of the tournament that I have. So yeah, definitely Tama's the best performance so far.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been pretty impressed with Tama Tonga. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say he is far and away like showing that he's absolutely a tip-top guy in New Japan. Like, he's deserving to be top 6. No, not at all, just yet. But he's also not someone that I feel like is wasting his moment, like, say, Dave Finlay. He's a guy that is going out there and really making a connection and trying his hardest to showcase all of his skills. And he's finding these spots, like the spot where he takes off the vest and he shows his new physique, which is pretty impressive. And he's working in a lot of the high-flying, fast-paced, exciting, flashy stuff that we liked about him in his tag matches, and incorporating that into cohesive matches where he's not looking out of place. Like, he definitely doesn't look like, for instance, as much as I love Okan, and we're going to talk about him, I still don't think Okan always looks like a guy that deserves to be in the mix. I think he's a little inconsistent. Tama Tonga, for a year now, has not looked inconsistent, and at any point when he's been put in a singles role, he's definitely not like a guy where I'm like, okay, he's on the caliber of like an Ospreay, an Ishii, or a Shingo, but I would rather watch his matches at this point than Sonata.
Oh, and yeah, so, definitely.
I think he's doing fantastic, basically, and it's not just that his matches are good, but the crowd is so invested in what's happening with him. And like right now, the match with Jay White is maybe one of the most anticipated matches of the whole G1.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge matchup. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Nice. Now we're at Tai Chi. He's got 2 points, but again, he's only had 2 matches, and he still has 4 matches to go. So he's kind of the dark horse of this block, where he kind of has the field wide open, where some of these guys, tournaments already decided for them. There's no telling what might happen with Tai Chi from here on out. And considering that he's one of the hardest hitting and more strong style, versed guys in this block, you could probably expect a lot of really great matches to come out of him for the remainder of the tournament.
Yeah. Tai Chi definitely has a great shot of getting some wins and really controlling the destiny of this B block. He did not have any matches in this last stretch, so he'll be back in action this weekend and can make his campaign to start making a shot at winning this B block.
Nice. So next we have Tomohiro Ishii. He's sitting at 2 points. He defeated Tamatonga on night 7. And then on night 10, which was today, he was defeated by the Great Okan in 12 minutes, 59 seconds, giving him his 3rd loss and effectively eliminating him mathematically from the tournament. So at this point, Ishii is already out of the contention for B block.
Yeah, not really surprising. Also, we kind of know where Ishii is slotted and how he gets booked, and especially with the rumors that this could potentially be his last G1 Climax, it kind of makes sense. I mean, in the last several years, he's kind of a guy that usually kind of finishes like 4-5, maybe 5-4, but usually kind of that lower half, maybe 500 record. So I can see him ending this tournament 3-3, which would put him at 6, and then with a smaller block, 6 looks good, but he'll be still mathematically eliminated very early on because he's already done right now. But it's Ishii. He's going to go out there, whether he wins or loses. He's going to have very good to great matches. We already talked about the Tamatonga match. I thought the Great Okan match was very good. It was kind of short. It was only 12 minutes and 59 seconds. So I don't think Ishii kind of pulled out the full playbook for that matchup, but I still thought it was a great way to kick off the night 10 set of matches.
Now, he has Sonata and Chase Owens in front of him, and those are both guys that are game, that he can have good matches with. But at the same time, those aren't matches where I'm like, oh, shit, like, you know what I mean? And I think that's one of the downsides of, like, a tournament format like this. We're seeing where, like, Ishii is, like, far and away probably the top performer in the block, but he's already eliminated, and the 2 guys he has left aren't necessarily matches that are going to light the world on fire. I wouldn't be surprised, considering that Chase and Sonata are both essentially probably eliminated, if Ishii defeats both of them and winds up, 3-3 with 6 points to kind of give him something a little bit respectable at the end. Although I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up like with 4 points.
Yeah.
At the end.
Yeah, but I think they'll try to keep him at that 6 point level. Like I said, in a block like this, having 6 points, I think at the end of the day, it looks fine.
Well, the thing is, if Ishii defeats Sonata, that would be the true like nail in the coffin for Sonata in the block. Because I mean, he's not technically eliminated until Jay has lost either that, or if Jay wins one more match, one or the other.
Yeah.
So, aside from that, we have Chase, where we talked about his match with Jay White. Like I mentioned, he's pretty much eliminated as well. But I do think that Chase is making a lot of effort in the tournament to have fun, compelling, matches. And he really is like a great, upper, like mid-card level guy that can work well with anybody.
Yeah, very versatile guy. Always looks for ways. I feel like he does a great job of trying to find unique stories to tell in his match, depending on who he's going in there with. Like
kind of feels like the Kanemaru of the tournament.
Yeah, kind of like how he mixes up with the Okan story, and then with the powder, and then now the whole Jay White story and the money. So I feel like he kind of looks for things to kind of make his matches a little bit different and really kind of capitalize with the dynamics between his character and whoever he's wrestling.
Last and but not least, we have Great Okan on night 8. He defeated Sonata defeated him in 16 minutes and 35 seconds. And then On night 10, he went into the match with Ishii with no points, defeated Ishii. That was today. So he finally gets on the board with 2 points. So he still has 3 matches left in the field, including a match with Jay White, and he's sitting at 2 points. And we already discussed those matches, but I do think it's very interesting where he kind of lays because, again, he has Jay White in front of him. So aside from just Taichi and Tama, Okan is hypothetically one of those guys that could get himself into contention were he to beat Jay White.
Yeah, we know, we've been hearing, there are big plans for Great Okan. The office really likes him. He's been getting over. So, I mean, they could pull that kind of big upset victory to help him and then also kind of make the block more interesting with Jay having a loss here. So he could kind of be that guy, kind of like Jonah in the A block, where he kind of, really grabs a hold of his destiny and gets a win over the block leader.
Definitely. And I mean, that's kind of the nice thing. It's sort of keeping things alive a little bit. But as we're coming down the final stretch, I'm wondering how they're going to book it out to where things are still kind of interesting and compelling, as things get tied up in these smaller blocks,
Right. And I guess maybe the benefit of having multiple blocks is you don't necessarily need all 4 blocks to be compelling. You can have that one, like the B block could be the one where Jay just runs away with it. Then you still have 3 blocks to play with.
The other thing too, though, is, until you and I have done this podcast, I have not sat down and done the math and really looked analytically at this stuff at all. And maybe that's a detriment to the structure because every night it's A, B, C, and D block matches on the same night. And you kind of lose track of all of it. And a lot of it, the importance of it I do think Kevin Kelly and the rest of the commentary team are doing a great job telling those stories. But, it's not like I'm paying super close attention. And maybe that's a detriment because normally when I'm watching a G1, I'm really paying attention to these narratives. And since it's so spread out and so, kind of all over the place, it's really hard to hone in on what's even really happening within each block.
Right. If you're not really taking notes or really paying attention, it's like, all right, when did Jonah have his last match? Like, who did he face last time? Like, when's his next match? Like, wait, how did he get those points?
It's hard also to get excited for upcoming matches if you're not really like keeping it on a calendar and being like, okay, on this night Jay is wrestling again, and on this night Okada's wrestling. Like, I'm just turning on the shows and being like, okay, what's up? Because I don't really know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just kind of like a surprise. Like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the C block now. So got 3 guys with 4 points on top of the C block. So first, let's talk about Zack Sabre Jr. On night 8, he was defeated by the ace, Hiroshi Tanahashi, 17 minutes and 32 seconds.
One of the best matches of the tournament so far. Best match of that night, in my opinion. Tanahashi and Zack Sabre, they have a long history, great matches almost every time out, so nothing to be surprised about there. But the finish of this match was essentially a situation where Zack put Tanahashi into a sub, Tanahashi reversed it, Zack went for another sub, Tanahashi stacked him for a pinfall, and both of Zack's shoulders were down. The referee counts the 1, 2, 3, and unbeknownst to the ref and Zack Sabre, his hand was extended clearly underneath the ring rope, like under the white line. It's like very like apparent. And so Tanahashi gets the win, but it's kind of a jaded win to cap off a really great match, essentially.
Yeah. It was a great match, and it's kind of that kind of screwy finish there. And at first, I was kind of wondering if it was on purpose or not, because I mean, like, Sabre kicked out, and he really didn't mention his shoulder. He was just kind of arguing with the ref if it was 3 or not, and then him and Tanahashi kind of embraced at the end, and he was kind of laughing it off, like, all right, you kind of got me, you pulled one on me, but I didn't see the backstage promos either, so I don't know if he's really talked up the whole arm under the ropes thing.
Yes, he is now, because apparently what happened is he himself wasn't aware of it when it happened, and then he was made aware, and he was like, "Well, that's bollocks." and then when he came out on the undercard, he was like when he came out during the tag matches the next night, he was like, "My hand was under the rock." So it's like he was also unaware. But I'll tell you this: of course, I think it's all work. I don't think he wasn't unaware that his hand was under the rope. I think his character was unaware, and then was made aware, and then now is like, blah blah blah. Two things with this. One, I think in my opinion, I think Zach is going to essentially win the rest of his matches, go into the final match with Naito with only the one loss against Tanahashi, and then lose to a streaking Naito, and they will both finish with 2 losses, and Naito will win the tiebreaker. After that, Zach will be able to say, I should have won the block because my one loss wasn't even really a loss because my hand was under the ropes the whole time. That's what I'm thinking there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking too. Yeah, Zach and Naito final. We'll talk about Naito, but yeah, definitely seems like they're setting up a comeback story for him. Saber right now, only, like you mentioned, only the one loss to Tanahashi. So right now, he's looking really good, and they've been giving Saber some opportunities. I mean, we're kind of going under the assumption that Naito's going to win this block, but I could see a scenario where we think Naito's going to get the big triumph win, but Saber's going to beat him, and Saber goes into the semifinals.
They've also done a lot of LIJ versus Suzuki-gun multi-man tag matches on the undercards, and there's always these very long, lingering interactions between Zach and Shingo, and it does seem like they might be setting up a Zach Shingo KOPW championship match for after the G1. I know we were asked that a few weeks ago, and now I've started to pay attention, and I think there's some smoke to that fire, which is another reason why I'm like, I don't know if Zach's actually going to win the block because of that.
Right.
Seems like he's got a date with Shingo anyways. But the other thing, too, is this match was great, but this finish, now, if this finish was just in a vacuum, it wouldn't be that bad. But it's like, there have been a lot of bad finishes in this G1. Mm-hmm. And not only that, there have been a lot of bad finishes in just New Japan this year. You look at the Ospreay storyline, which,
oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm kind of wondering, like, are they just dropping the whole he was getting screwed for so long thing? Like, is that just done now? Or is there ever going to be a payoff to that? And
well, I mean, I guess he's technically still, well, no, after today's show.
After today, no, well, yeah, I guess whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it's the G1, and you're just giving people a lot of like, why do this? Why not just have Zach lose? I don't understand exactly. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, why do we need to, at this point, protect Zach?
Protect Zack Sabre Jr.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I get if they want to do the whole, I should have won thing, and maybe they are doing the UK show. Maybe that's his way of getting a title shot in the UK, is because he should have won the block, and maybe somehow he gets a shot based off of that. Maybe, but besides that, I don't really see any good reason why they need to do this kind of screwy finisher.
Well, in any case, that puts Zach at 4 points, and he won his first 2 matches, and he still has 3 matches to go. So, the C block and the D block, they're a little bit more open than the A and the B block when it comes to these eliminations. So,
yeah.
After that, we got Hiroki Goto sitting at 4 points. On night 7, he defeated Aaron Hanare, 17 minutes and 12 seconds. And then on night 10, he was defeated by Kenta. So he went into that match undefeated. He was defeated by Kenta, and he lost in the semi-main event, 18 minutes and 8 seconds.
The G and G1 stands for Goto. This man, like you mentioned, came in undefeated into the Kenta match. He's on top of the block here with guys like Zack Sabre and Tanahashi. He's right now has a very good chances of, winning this block. I mean, obviously it's not going to happen, but he's positioned he's positioned very high right now. He's been having some very fun matchups. This match with Hanare was a very hard-hitting matchup, kind of your never slugfest between these guys.
I loved the exchanges between Hinare and Goto.
Yeah, like
in fact, we even considered Goto for Wrestler of the Month, considering the Hinare and Naito match, which, obviously the Naito match is a big upset for him, and the fact that he won the Never Openweight 6-man tag team titles during the road tour as well. So he's kind of like he had a great July, essentially.
yeah. But then, August was a rough start for him, losing to Kenta on night 10. Again, I thought that was another very good, hard-hitting match, but there was a ton of shenanigans in it, though. They had the whole callback to Kenta wanting Goto's staff, and we had some ref bumps, and Kenta eventually, used the staff and was able to kind of get the advantage.
They were done poorly, too. Like, the ref bumps were, like, clunky and didn't make sense, and the stuff with the staff, like, the match was great, but then when they started moving into those segments and sequences, they kept botching and, like, kind of just, like, it just didn't, it took me out of the match for a bit, to be honest.
It wasn't needed. And even the finish, Kenta, he messed up the GTS towards the end.
They messed it up and then had to do it again. So there was a lot of timing and miscommunication issues towards the tail end of that match.
Yes, that was kind of rough. But besides that, I mean, Goto's been looking pretty good in this tournament thus far, kayfabe-wise and match quality-wise. And, right now he's in a good position, but he's going to have to, keep winning if he wants to win this block.
I mean, I would say so far, out of everybody in the block, he is probably second only to Sabre in terms of match quality, just overall. That might change, of course, but as it stands right now, and in terms of, like, overachieving, like, obviously Goto's a legend and has this great past, but, like, hasn't really been capitalizing on his talents in a long time. And so, like, throughout the whole G1, the only two guys I feel like that might be, like, overachieving in kayfabe higher than him are maybe, like, Finlay and Hinare. But there's an argument for Goto. I mean, just considering, like, the resurgence, like, this is the most revitalized I've seen him in a G1 in a long time. Where a lot of guys are wrestling lackadaisical, Goto's kind of standing out.
Yeah. Also, too, I think it's pretty funny. They've been mentioning on commentary that his son, I forgot what the context was, but his son wants him to win the AEW World Championship and win the G1.
That's tight.
Oh, my gosh.
So next up, we have the Ace of the Universe, Hiroshi Tanahashi. As we discussed, he defeated Zack Sabre Jr., he's sitting at 4 points, and the only real detrimental thing about Tanahashi's run so far is that, actually, no, I apologize. I was gonna speak out of turn. The positive about his run so far is that he has defeated the two top leading favorites of the block in Zack Sabre Jr. and Tetsuya Naito. And so, I mean, depending on how you look at it, that might be a good or bad thing. If you think that Tanahashi has a good chance of winning the block, well, that's great. If you're thinking to yourself, there's no way Tanahashi reasonably wins this block, then we're looking at Evil, Goto, and Kenta all being potential people to beat him in subsequent fashion very quickly here. So there is that aspect to it too.
Yeah, I mean, right now he's starting off strong, but I do think it's going to be, we're going to kind of see, I think, the pendulum switch between him and Naito, where you have Naito with the slow start, Tanahashi with the good start, and I think they're going to kind of switch there, and Tanahashi's going to go through a losing streak, and I could see Tanahashi ending up 3-3 and getting 6 points.
Well, in order for Zack Sabre and Naito, either one of them, to win, he would need to go 3-3, and he's already lost to Hinare, which means if you're a betting man, he's going to lose 2 out of the next 3 matches to Evil, Goto, and Kenta, which, you know what? Tanahashi is not on that final block final night. He's on the last to final night. So that would make sense if it is, in fact, that he's mathematically eliminated by that point.
Right, and those last 3 guys are all guys that he could lose to.
They're all guys that I think I don't think he's lost to Kenta, has he? Or no, he probably has. Yeah.
I think he has, but Kenta is definitely going to be coming for revenge after what happened at Wrestle Kingdom in January this year and the injuries that Kenta received from that no DQ match they had. And we already kind of saw that on the road tour with Kenta attacking Tanahashi. So I think that's going to be a very heated match. Kenta's going to be seeking for blood, and I think Kenta's going to be looking to end Tanahashi's G1.
Yeah. Another guy who's in front of him is Evil, who's also sort of a dark horse and sort of has, he's only had 2 tournament matches. So his field's a little more open as well.
Yeah.
So there's that to consider.
So I'm coming in now with 2 points. All the remaining guys have 2 points. So first let's talk about the based Aaron Hanare on night 7. He lost to Hiroki Goto, like we mentioned. Overall, what have you been thinking about Hanare's performances?
I've really thought that Hanare has, I don't want to call it overachieved because that seems demeaning, like, oh, this guy's, doing better than he's capable of. No, like he's showing what he's actually capable of. And, we've been fans of Hanare on this podcast since the early inception days of his like graduation period. I don't know if we were sold when he was a Lion, but as soon as they gave him like the
brown Tatanka looking thing,
yeah, the knockoff, New Zealander sort of indigenous gimmick initially, we were like all in on the guy because he was fucking awesome. And it's been a long time since we've seen him in a position to really showcase that. And I mean, he's been awesome, man. For me, I would put him at number 3 in terms of performance in the block, just behind Goto and just behind Zack Sabre Jr. And in fact, he wrestled both of those guys. So the only match that was maybe not as what you would expect to be as far as like great performances, probably the Tanahashi match that he did win. But he kind of, and that wasn't bad either, but he rebounded from that and just had awesome matches with Sabre and Goto back to back.
I think the thing with the Tanahashi match, I don't think the whole point was for them to have a great match. I think the point was to get Hanare over as a big threat, have him, out-muscle Tanahashi, get that big upset win, and kind of get fans thinking, oh, Hanare just beat the Ace. Maybe he actually has a shot on this thing. And then, like you mentioned, with other matches he's had, like he's looked very good. His strikes, I've been loving a lot of those elbows and the Muay Thai strikes that he's been incorporating, that springboard spinning kick. Like he's been looking so good in these matches.
Springboard spinning kick, the jumping Muay Thai knee. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, like that knee, it's not like a running striking knee, the kind that like say Kenny Omega does with the V trigger, but it's one where he like steps up.
Yes.
So it's very similar to what CM Punk does in the corner, but he does it standing.
It's like Sagat from Street Fighter.
Yeah, well, Sagat's a Muay Thai fighter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if you love Muay Thai, you'll like Aaron Hanare, which I'm a big Muay Thai fan. So, like, yeah, I'm really digging what he's bringing to the table here. Plus, he's showing, like, a lot of that fighting spirit. Like, right now, he's absolutely on the table as a strong style Carl Gotch Wrestler of the Year candidate. So,
yeah,
big, like, very, very impressed with Hanare.
And we had a
now,
question.
as far as, like, where he stands, I would expect him personally to lose 1 or 2 more matches, but not all the rest of his matches. Like, he's lost 2, so I mean, he's still got Naito, Evil, and Kenta in front of him. Expect him to beat at least one of those guys, maybe 2 of them.
Yeah, I could see him ending 3-3.
Yeah, he's probably going to play spoiler to a certain extent here.
Yeah. And we had a question from Rainsy Wrestling. What's Aaron Hanare's gym routine?
We don't know the answer to that. I will tell you this, though. He was a guest recently on one of the episodes of Super J-Cast. I don't normally tell people to go listen over to the competition, even though those guys are great. But I listened to it, and he did mention some of his gym routine. He also mentioned his diet as well, which I was like, holy fuck, like he's taking a lot of calories.
Yeah, you can definitely tell he's beefed up a lot. He's looking really, I think, the thickest he's ever looked, packed on a lot of mass, and I think it's working for him.
He said that's what he said pretty much. He said that it's actually making it easier for him to bump and move in the ring. So yeah, if you haven't listened to that episode, it's definitely worth checking out. I was pretty I thought it was pretty good. So yeah, but I don't know Aaron's gym routine. One thing he did mention is he talked about how a lot of the older stars in New Japan, one of the things that they do is like they don't stop training. Like not just from like a personal standpoint, but like they have their personal routines, then they have their like ring work routines where they're still trying to get better in the ring, even though they've been doing it for 20 years or plus. Then he also mentioned before matches, they're still doing their squats, they're still doing their shadow boxing, they're still doing their footwork. And he was like, that's basically what I'm trying to do. He's like, I want to be like Nagata, who's still doing like, however many rounds of shadow boxing before he gets in the ring. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Dude, you mentioned Nagata. I'm just thinking now, how much better would this tournament be if we had Nagata somewhere in one of these blocks?
I mean, okay, so we might get to maybe now's not the point. Okay, I might as well just say it. So like this past week, I reflected on the format of this tournament and also the participants and how it's going and how it's been implemented. And I don't know that I'm the biggest fan. And I thought to myself, well, what if we kept the old format and got rid of 8 of the lowest ranked competitors, you know what I mean? And just went back to 20. I really found that hard to do. Like, I was like, I can't get rid of 8 guys. There's too many good guys deserving. What if we got rid of just the bottom 6 and then kept the 22 most deserving guys and kept the A and the B block together and the C and the D block together? What would that look like? And I did a preliminary run. Tell me how you would feel about this block setup. A block: Okada, Okan, Cobb, Ishii, Archer, Sonata, Jonah, Tamatonga, Tom Lawler, Taichi, and Jay White.
Sounds great.
Yeah. And then in the B block, you wind up with Zack Sabre Jr., Goto, Hinare, Shingo, Tanahashi, Naito, Kenta, Ospreay, Juice Robinson, ELP, and Yoshihashi.
Again, sounds great.
And then you cut out your Yanos, your Fales, and
Chase,
Yujiro, and I think Dave Finlay.
Yeah, I would have much preferred that.
Yeah, the way that things are going, I'm like, maybe they should have done this instead.
Next guy we got to talk about is the King of Darkness, Evil. He lost to Tetsuya Naito here on night 9. He has 2 points, and I gotta say, I actually enjoyed this main event matchup between Naito and Evil.
I enjoyed it too, and I might even be inclined to say this was potentially the best match they've had with each other post Evil's turn.
Yeah, I think this is the highest I've been on any of their matches. I went 3.75 on it. There was not a ton of shenanigans. Yes, Dick Togo was out there, and you had that, and Evil was doing his normal cheating, but you didn't have show. There was no wrench. There was no lights off. There was no groat wire. There was no dog cages. There was no pimp canes. There wasn't usual, like, it was mainly just Evil and Togo trying to, out-cheat Naito, and Naito being this fiery babyface, having to fight both of them off, and you had a little bit of plunder in there with the chair spot, and then the craziest spot of the whole match where Naito pulls a table out, and he pile drives Evil off the apron through the table, and that table just exploded, and we know that we joke about the strong style table and how sometimes they don't always break or they kind of just bend a little bit. And it takes a lot of force. Well, that table freaking exploded when Naito dropped Evil through that, which is a pretty scary spot because Naito almost lost Evil on the apron before he even jumped into the table for the pile driver.
Absolutely. I totally agree with everything that you said there. And this is something we had discussed when we talked about like a few years ago when Jay first came into Bullet Club there was this trajectory where it was like, okay, you're going to get saddled with all this like character work and, all these cheat filled matches that kind of bring down the quality of your matches. But then over time, they kind of gave them more leeway to have good matches. And when that happened, they gave that role to someone else. There always seems to be somebody that sort of just sucks because of that gimmick. And in this case, for a while, it's been Evil, but we're about like at the 2-year mark of his gimmick. And now I think they are starting to give him more leeway to revert a little bit more back to what he had been previously, just with all the new fixings and everything like that. So I'm not surprised it's going this way. Now, the one thing that a detractor might say in this regard is, well, sure, this was the best match the two of them might have had together, but it still wasn't like a classic. And it is still the main event night of a G1 Climax night. And to that, I would say, you're right. I don't know what to say to that. I can't really defend it, but I will tell you the match was good. Can't sit here and say like, oh, this was like, Ishii versus, Kenny Omega in the middle of the G1.
Yeah, right.
But it was good. So there is a part of me that like is a little bit sad because it's not like what you expect out of the G1, but at the same time, it's not Evil just being the fucking worst thing on the entire show. You know what I mean?
Right. It was actually enjoyable. It was a very good matchup, and at this point, like I'll take that when it comes to Evil.
Right. So next up we have Naito. He's sitting at 2 points. As we mentioned previously, he already has 2 losses in the tournament to both Goto and Tanahashi. This was his first win. Had he not beaten Evil in this spot, he probably would have been eliminated. And I think he's living, and he's sort of like Ric Flair at the end of his run in WWE. Like every match is a career-threatening match.
Yeah.
Well, every match is a G1 threatening match for him. He has to literally win everything from here on out to realistically like win the block.
Yeah,
so,
I think that added to the drama of the Evil match. We've seen
right.
Evil beat Naito. They were cheating a lot. Like that could have been a very real possibility of Evil pulls the upset and then Naito's just done. That's been the whole story. Like this is potentially his last chance to win the G1 and go on to main event the Dome one more time. So that could have easily ended with Evil, but he got the win here. Like you mentioned, now every match going forward is a must-win scenario.
Well, before he faces Sabre on the block finals night, he still has Kenta and Hanare in front of him. So my guess, he beats both of those guys and, goes into that final block night, with just with the 2 blemishes.
Yeah, those are very winnable matches for him.
After that, we have Kenta. He's also sitting at 2 points. Like we mentioned, he defeated Goto. And, Kenta's kind of in a precarious position. He still has Naito, Tanahashi, and Hanare in front of him, but he also has those 2 losses. And I think that the Naito match is going to be really important for him. I think the Tanahashi match will be very important as well. And I'm guessing from here on out, I would suspect he loses to Naito. He beats Tanahashi. And that Hanare one's a toss-up.
Yeah, I think that's one where you could give it to either guy. Again, those are both guys I could see ending up at 6 points. I don't know if the math works out that both of them can end with 6. But yeah, I think Kenta, we've seen the rivalry with him and Naito, that big sold-out match they had before the pandemic, so that they're going to kind of throw it back to that, and I think Naito will get the win there. And then I think, like I mentioned earlier, Kenta will get his revenge on Tanahashi from the Tokyo Dome and kind of knock Tanahashi out of the tournament and play spoiler for Tanahashi.
Nice. So that is going to do it for the C block. So let's move on finally to the D block and to everyone's surprise. Leading the D block with 6 points is one young David Finlay. On night 8, he defeated former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Shingo Takagi in 14 minutes and 50 seconds. And then on night 10, he defeated former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Will Ospreay in 15 minutes and 28 seconds. So Dave Finlay coming in hot.
Man, who booked this ish?
This man is 4 matches in to his tournament. He only has 2 to go, and he's 3-1. 3-1.
So yeah, so on one end, the positive end, they're finally pushing David Finlay. It's a guy who's been grinding for a long time. They're giving him opportunity here. 2 big wins over 2 former IWGP World Heavyweight Champions. He's streaking, looking, kayfabe wise looking pretty good, building a lot of momentum. He's leading this D block, his first G1. So all that is the positive. The negative here, for me, I don't know if you feel like this way, Josh, or other people feel this way. I just don't feel like the performances have been there. This week, he was in there with Shingo and Will Ospreay, 2 of the best wrestlers in this block, in this company, and in this world. And I felt like they pretty much kind of carried him in those matches. Especially in the Ospreay match. I felt in the Shingo match, to me, it kind of felt like Shingo was like sleepwalking in that match and kind of just wrestled when Shingo's great. Even when Shingo does that, Shingo's great, and I feel like he didn't put out the full effort because it was Finlay. And then this Ospreay match, again, it was a great main event. I went 4 stars on it, but it's Will Ospreay. And in some of these other Finlay matches we've seen, it's like, he hasn't really put out that. I don't know if he's not. I hate to say not putting out effort, but his performances have just not been lining up with other guys in this tournament, especially when you compare to somebody too like a Aaron Henare, where you really see the strive and the difference in his performances previous to his gimmick change.
Well, I think you might be being a little bit too harsh on this, just slightly, but I do see what you're saying, and I do agree to an extent. I mean, I do feel like you have to give the devil his due, because he did have great main events against Juice Robinson and Will Ospreay.
Yeah.
And that's undeniable. But I agree with you in the sense that I didn't feel like he was breaking out in those matches. If anything, I felt like they were both, and here's where I think I agree with you. I felt like Juice and Will Ospreay were, for him, these were some of the best matches he's ever had in his entire New Japan career. For them, these were lower end matches for Juice and for Will in a G1. These were not matches that would ever really go on, say, like their top 10 or top 15 G1 matches, or even top 20 probably. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's where the disconnect is. It's like, for him, it's like, oh man, I'm having classics, but it's like, no, you're in there with great workers and they're carrying most of the workload. And I think the difference between him and some of the other guys we've been a little bit more impressed with, like an ELP or a Henare, they just really seem like they're putting everything into it. And David Finlay doesn't feel like a guy that is ascending, even though the booking is saying he is. You know what I mean?
Right. And with guys like Henare and ELP, they've gotten over with the crowd. And I don't feel that connection with Finlay. And I know people might say, well, it's a clap crowd environment. How can you tell? I'm telling you, if you've been watching New Japan for the last couple of years in the pandemic, you can tell the differences in claps. You can tell when people are oohing and awing. You can tell when they're really into somebody. And I really haven't felt that with Finlay. He did get big oohs and ahs when he had the big upsets over Juice and Ospreay. Right. The crowd was like, oh, and Shingo, crowd was like, oh, wow. Like, yeah, he got that. But throughout his whole match, you just didn't really have, there wasn't that kind of clap cadence there for him. Like, watch Filthy Tom's matches and watch Finlay's matches, and you will see that the crowd is so much more invested in a guy like Filthy Tom than they are Dave Finlay, a guy who was a young lion who grew up in this system and who they've been watching for years.
Well, I do think that him beating these people is giving him more credibility and might be getting him over to some extent with the crowd. But yeah, I do agree in the sense that like they're not rabid for him the way they were for like Alex Zane just a month ago.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So I agree with you there. I think the biggest indictment is that he went out there with Shingo and had kind of a mid match. Like not even, I mean, just you could call it good, but it was just a whatever match. And it was like, had him beat Shingo? That's weird. So you know, the big story though is that going into the match with Juice, Juice was claiming to still be the IWGP US champion. He beat Juice. After he beat Juice, he took the belt and he said, "You're not the champion, but whatever claim you had, I ended it, and I'm taking this belt with me against Will." Which that was like, that's weird. So then he faces Will tonight, and you're like, okay, so where's this going?
Mm-hmm.
And then he beats Will Ospreay, and he says he didn't take the belt because he thought he was champion. He took it to get in the mind and the psyche and play mind games with Will. And evidently it worked because he was able to hit Will with the trash panda and get him out of there clean 1, 2, 3. And then he gave Will the belt back post match and said, "The next time you defend that belt, it's against me." So it's like, okay, it sets him up as a challenger. That's a big match down the line. I get it. But it's like, well, then why did we do the whole thing with Juice at Forbidden Door with the promos, him carrying the belt, and him being the guy that's facing Will on the last night? Like that, this whole detour just feels fucking weird.
Yeah, it's all kind of messed up, which we already know the whole plan and the booking for the U.S. title has been messed up due to injury and illness, but I feel like they've had enough time to course correct, and I don't understand, like you said, where this whole Dave Finlay detour comes in. Are they going to set up a triple threat match between these three guys for the title, or is Will going to have to defend against both these guys in the fall, maybe? I guess depending if Juice beats him on that last night. So I guess there's a couple of different directions that can go with it, but I just don't. It feels like they were definitely doing a more personal Juice Ospreay story. But I guess with both of those guys being heels, I guess they felt maybe they need to insert a baby face into the picture to maybe have somebody that quote unquote the fans can get behind. Maybe, I don't know.
Now, one last thing I'll say about Finlay before we move on. He has now defeated Will Ospreay, Shingo Takagi, and Juice Robinson, 3 of the most favored individuals in the entirety of the D block. And he only has two more matches, just Yoshihashi and Phantasmo. So if he just loses one more match, right? And any of those guys end up with a record of 4-2, he's going to probably beat them head to head in the math. So it's probably likely. I mean, of course, Phantasmo, he's been pretty inactive and he still has 4 matches to go, so you can't discount him. But you know, I don't assume Yoshihashi or Yujiro are going to win the block by any stretch of the imagination. So you kind of have to base the rest of Finlay's booking off of how you think they're going to book Ospreay, Shingo, and Juice potentially, which tells me that he's either something weird's going to happen and he's only going to lose one more match, or he has to lose the next 2 matches, which to me, him going on this stretch and beating Will Ospreay and laying down the gauntlet challenge, that's probably the end of his story arc. I think he's losing to Yoshihashi and Phantasmo for the rest of the block, and that will open things up for the rest of those 4 guys to potentially win the rest of that D block.
Right. At this point, like, he doesn't need to win this block. Like, he has his U.S. title match kind of set up here. He beat Ospreay, so he can kind of hang his hat on that, and that could be the arc that carries him into the fall.
If he does win one more match, it makes the tournament almost unwinnable for most of those guys, unless like Ospreay would pretty much have to go undefeated the rest of the time. Shingo would pretty much be done already at this point. Juice would be done already at this point. And so if he were, like, let's say hypothetically he wins his last 2 matches, that creates a scenario where only Ospreay and ELP can win, which I think is possible. Yeah. I mean, that is possible, but I find it highly unlikely. I think the more likely scenario at this point, just based on his story arc, I think he drops the next two.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let's take a look at the next guy in the D block, Will Ospreay. Like we mentioned, he is at 4 points right now. So on night 7, he defeated Yujiro Takahashi at 11 minutes and 17 seconds to get up to 4 points. And like we just mentioned, he lost to David Finlay on this morning's show, night 10.
I really don't have too many thoughts about the Yujiro match. I'm actually struggling to remember it because I think it was that was the right after we got done recording. Like that was the next night. So
yeah,
a lot has happened between them. But from what I do recall, this was probably the best Yujiro match we've seen in the tournament so far. But Will beat him in 11 minutes. So
yeah, I think the thing I remember the most is it's just Yujiro reconciling with Peter.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so they had the whole thing where Peter had left with ELP just the night prior or the couple nights prior. So, yeah, him and Peter reconciled, and even though she came back to his aid, Will Ospreay still picked up the 2 wins or the 2 points, beat that ass. And
yeah, he once again hit the that hidden blade the wrong way, which I think it looks nastier when he does it from the front.
Right. One thing I didn't like about the Dave Finlay match with Will Ospreay too is that the finish. Well, I guess depending on your outlook, the finish just came from out of nowhere. Like they're in the middle of the sequence, and Dave Finlay just got him up for trash pan and just dropped him. And I mean, I guess that's kind of a flash win, and it is legit. But from a fan enjoyment standpoint, I was just like, wait, what? He beat him? That was sorry as fuck.
Yeah, like it's the main event. Like I'm expecting some kind of crazy like Will Ospreay clothing sequence with reversal.
Yeah, they went just over 15 minutes in the main event of a G1 night. Like, okay, I know we're talking about Dave Finlay again, but let me just give you one last example of the difference between here's an example when it comes to Dave Finlay. You know how we're saying like he's not really living up to what we think he should be? Look at the match he had with Jay White in the New Japan Cup last year. Think about how fucking incredible that match was.
Yeah.
And then think about how good the match with Will Ospreay was the next night or in the next round. That match was awesome too. Those were 2 matches back to back that at the time when they happened, this was before he stopped coming back to Japan, where you were like, oh wait, am I talking about 2 New Japan Cups ago? I might be talking about 2 New Japan Cups ago.
It was New Japan Cup 2020 during the pandemic, like the heart of the pandemic.
Oh shit, yeah. So that's how far back we're going. But in either case, that was a situation where it was like, dude, David Finlay really has something. He's getting over with the fans. They finally gave him the ball. He's taking it and he's running with it. Holy fuck. Okay, that's what I expect out of that guy in this G1, especially since he's also wrestling Will Ospreay. You know what I mean? And we've already seen him wrestle Will Ospreay in the same kind of environment and do better.
Yeah. It's very questioning. It's like what's happening here, and I don't know if the whole layoff from being in Japan has kind of messed his rhythm up. But yeah, what we're seeing right now in G1 compared to what we saw in the New Japan Cup 2 years ago is definitely, there's a big difference there.
Yeah, the other thing too, when it just comes to Will's doing great in this tournament, but he's not really having the kind of performances you would expect from Will Ospreay in a G1. We've already talked about how like all throughout the year he's having this breakout year and setting himself up. And normally the G1 is the time where guys like him pad that resume so much so that nobody else, can really catch up to them. And I'm not really seeing that from him yet. Obviously, he still has Shingo in front of him and a few other guys. So that remains to be seen. But at the same time, it's like, damn, it's Will Ospreay, it's the G1, he's halfway done. And I mean, yeah, the ELP match was really great, but nothing he's done so far is something where you're like, go out of your way, you have to see this.
Yeah. It's almost kind of that way for a lot of the top guys in this tournament. You look at your.
It's almost this way for the entirety of the entire tournament period.
Right, and I don't know if you can just blame it on the format. I don't know if you blame it on the way the blocks were put together. If you want to blame it on the clap crowds, I know a lot of the wrestlers are very demotivated by fans still not being allowed to cheer. And I know Ospreay has been one of the vocal ones, tweeting at the Japanese government, asking why fans still aren't allowed to cheer. So I don't know if it's a situation now where he's kind of picking his spot somewhere. He's going to kind of go all out.
Okay, so I looked it up. Those matches with Dave Finlay, that's not 2020. That was 2021.
Okay.
That New Japan Cup.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. And I guess we can just give a quick recap on that when we get done with this block, but it is weird. I agree.
Yeah.
So the next guy we have is this is Rock Hard. Juice Robinson. He's sitting at 2 points. I almost went to imitate him, but like I can't do it. Like his voice is so crazy. After night 9, he was defeated by Yoshihashi in 12 minutes and 16 seconds, which was surprising.
Yeah, kind of an upset here because also, Juice coming off the loss from Finlay, and it seemed like Juice initially coming into the tournament was going to be in line for a big push and somebody who's going to be winning a lot probably towards the beginning. But yeah, that Finlay loss and now here losing to Yoshihashi, which was kind of a huge upset in a way. Yoshihashi hasn't had singles gold. Juice is former U.S. champion. So yeah, quick 12-minute match, but I thought it was very good. It was very hard hitting. There's a lot of really great back and forth towards the end there, but then Yoshihashi was just able to hit the karma and put Juice away.
Yeah, I like the match a lot. I like Juice's work in the tournament, even though he's only had 2 matches so far. It's just, yeah, man. I mean, it's just so weird.
Wait, wasn't this his third match?
Yeah, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I just caught it. Yeah, so he beat Shingo and then he lost to Finlay and Yoshihashi. So he's had 3 matches. My apologies. But even still, yeah, weird booking. I don't know what to say about that, but he's got Ospreay on the last night coming up. He has ELP coming up, Inter Bullet Club match, and then Yujiro Inter Bullet Club match. So, usually those Inter Bullet Club matches aren't really blow-away standouts, even though him and ELP could probably do something pretty great together. He's going to need to win both of those to be in contention, and then that match with Ospreay could be a potential determinant for either one of them to win the block. But yeah, I guess he was going to need to take some losses anyways. Right. And if you are trying to, and I'm not trying to cap for it, but at the same time, if you think about it logically, if you're trying to establish him as a top guy in Bullet Club, might not be a good look to have him losing to under guys in the same faction like Fantastic and Yujiro. So maybe that's why you just bite the bullet. You have him take the loss to Yoshihashi and Finlay for storyline purposes. You have him beat the other Bullet Club guys, and then have him go inviable against Ospreay. That's just my guess.
Well, I think that makes the most sense. It seems based where we're at today, Finlay, Ospreay, and Juice are going to be the 3 main players going into those last few nights.
My only problem with all of that, well, number one, if he loses another match in this block, he's done, period.
Yeah.
But my biggest issue is, why did you have him come in talking all this mess about the red belt if he was going to, quote unquote, lose it to Finlay and then still have a date with Ospreay down the line in the finals. So that whole thing, I think it's been fumbled pretty big, to be honest with you.
Yeah. The only thing is, if he beats Ospreay on the last night and steals the belt again, and then kind of go back to where he started, it's like, all right, I proved that I could beat Ospreay. I definitely should be the U.S. champ. I should have never.
So then what? We're going to end up with a triple threat?
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. I feel like they're going to do a three-way because they want.
I hate triple threats.
Well, I feel like because with Juice and Ospreay both being heels, maybe Gail's like, oh, I need to throw a babyface in here. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
So,
very possible, I guess. I'd rather Ospreay just defend against each guy separately.
Yeah.
Which makes me feel like, well, then why are we setting it all up now during G1? And also, can Ospreay just do something else? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, can we get Ospreay in like the title picture?
Yeah.
Moving on to the next guy, Tokyo Pimp, Yujiro Takahashi, also with 2 points. Like we mentioned, he lost to Will Ospreay in his best performance in this tournament. And we've seen him against Ospreay in previous tournaments, and that's usually been one of his best matches also. And I feel like it's not going to get any better for Yujiro match quality-wise. Kayfabe-wise, I really don't see him winning a ton more matches either.
Yujiro Takahashi does not belong in the G1 anymore.
Yeah. I'm getting real tired of him holding a G1 spot and having these mid-matches.
Yep. I would rather have literally a young lion that I know is going to eat all the pinfalls in this tournament than Yujiro Takahashi at this point.
Yeah, you get Vegeta, Oiwa in there.
Any of them. It doesn't matter to me. Any of them.
Yeah.
Kevin Knight, DKC, I don't give a fuck. You could put whoever in this tournament. Like, Yujiro should not be in this tournament ever again, period.
Maybe we should put Carl Fredericks in.
Well, he doesn't work for the company anymore. But you know what? That would have probably been way better than this.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next guy, Dragon Shingo Takagi, the provisional KOPW champion. You know, you might forget that because he does not bring that trophy out to him.
Well, they said on commentary that apparently they're going to do a new trophy or a new, something for KOPW.
Well, I know Shingo had been campaigning for them to create an actual championship belt for it.
If I was him, I would do something different, like a ring or I don't know, like a medal, like a gold medal or a crown. KOPW. You have a fucking crown.
I don't know. I have a hard time seeing Shingo being like, I want a crown.
And a fucking scepter and a robe.
King Shingo.
Yeah, bro. I grew up in the 80s. There was King Haku, King Hacksaw Jim Duggan, King Macho Man Randy Savage, King Harley Race. You know what I'm saying? Like
King Billy Gunn.
Yeah. All them.
Oh, man.
But yes, I'll say this, man. Shingo is 3 matches in, and he had definitely a great, like what I'd say, truly great match with Yoshihashi, a match that I would consider underrated with Juice Robinson. But so far, this is not what you expect from Shingo. And he's got Yujiro left, and the only shining light is the fact that he still has ELP and Ospreay on the docket, which is like, okay, hell yeah, let's plug in for those.
Yeah.
But it's Shingo, and he's halfway through the tournament. It's just whatever. He's a former champion, and like, I don't get it.
Yeah, it's very similar, like you're mentioning with Ospreay and some of the other guys in the tournament. It's like these are the guys we expect to be, the big match factory, the ones that are, when we previewed the show, we were like, yeah, this D block, it's going to be the Ospreay Shingo show. They're going to go out here and have all these great matches with everybody in the block. And yes, they've been having, some of the best matches, but it's not that high level match of the year contender that you would expect from a guy like an Ospreay or Shingo. And especially like you mentioned with Shingo being former world champion just last year, his booking and just some of the layout of his matches has not been there. And I just don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a thing of where he's just not motivated right now, or it's the environment, or it's the opponents. I don't know what's going on.
They're not putting him in main events.
Yeah, he's not getting booked in main events.
So it's not like, I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe all the wrestlers told themselves this is a fake G1.
Yeah, maybe they aren't happy with the format change and like, you know what, whatever. Go out here and just, give a little 3.5 star performance.
We'll just give him a little taste.
Yeah. Oh man. And so yeah, he lost to Finley on night 8, which was a big upset, and for me, I was not happy with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, he still has ELP and Ospreay down the line. Now, that Ospreay match is going to be one of the most important matches of the whole block, because whichever guy wins, in my opinion, is probably the one that has the likelihood of winning the whole entire block, even before they get down to the finals, because that's a huge, huge, huge tiebreaker for both guys. So
yeah,
keep your eye out on that one. Plus, I'm of the opinion, and there's nothing you can do to change it at this point. Just given how the match quality's been in this tournament, that's going to be the match of the tournament, probably including the finals and the block finals.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right.
There's probably nothing in this entire tournament that's capable of performing on the Ospreay Shingo level, even if we just get an abbreviated, abridged version of their, previous matches. If they go out there and they give us a 4.5 version of Ospreay and Shingo, it's gonna mop this fucking
Yeah, it's gonna be a point where we're so thirsty for great matches. That match we'll probably overrate it if they give us like the abridged version. We'll be like, oh my gosh, they did it again. 5.5.
I'm gonna come on I don't even go over 5. I'm gonna be like 6 stars. But that doesn't make sense. You rated all their other matches 5 and below. I said what I said.
Oh man. Next up, ELP El Phantasmo. He has 2 points. He did not have any matches through night 7 through 10. Been very inactive, but he's in that same position as Taichi, where because he hasn't had many matches, he has a better chance of controlling his destiny and getting in good position to win this block.
Yeah, the thing with him though is I feel like he's a little bit more capable of actually having a running chance of actually being the guy to win the block and come from behind, as opposed to some of the other inactive competitors in the other blocks,
Yeah, definitely seems like obviously the company's very behind Phantasmo, and there seems to be a big push behind him right now. So yeah, I could definitely see him being one of those guys where, that they're trying to establish Finley right now. They could also try to establish Phantasmo by having him go on a streak and win a lot of matches here.
Yeah, because I'm looking. So in the A block, the guy with only 2 matches is Jonah. In the B block, it's Taichi. In the C block, it is Evil. And then in D block, it's Phantasmo. So every block has that one guy who still has an open field. And it may be a negative or positive, depending on how you look at it, but they are going to have the remainder of their matches in a pretty condensed, time frame, as opposed to the rest of their, competitors in the block.
Yeah. So then the last guy here, Yoshihashi, 1/3 of the Never Openweight 6-man tag team champs, 2 points. Like we mentioned, on night 9, he picked up that big upset win over Rock Hard Juice Robinson. And, Yoshihashi, man, this guy is killing it. Goes out here, gives maximum effort, has very hard-hitting matches. I feel like the crowd has been getting behind him more. There's just been a newfound confidence in him since winning the Never Six-Man title the first time, and he's just been, putting out maximum effort. He's a guy, he might not have, your match of the year candidates, but he's going to go out there and give it his all. He's going to have bangers. Like you mentioned, that Shingo match so far, still one of the better matches of the whole tournament.
I was mistaken a second ago. I said Phantasmo is the only guy in the block with only 2 matches. It looks like Yoshihashi is also in that camp. But with just 2 matches, I would say, in my opinion, there's a compelling argument that he's the block leader in terms of match quality. The only other person that might be able to compete with him is Will Ospreay. And so we're talking about Yoshihashi having a better tournament at this point than Juice Robinson, Shingo Takagi, and ELP.
Wow.
And I mean, that's not cap. That's true.
Yeah, but it's just crazy to think,
Is it that crazy? Think about 2 years in the G1 when he had that incredible B block performance, and like the only guy that did better than him was like Tanahashi.
I know, but he's in a block with Shingo Takagi and Will Ospreay.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's gonna be like, now keep in mind he still has Ospreay in front of him. He has Phantasmo, Yujiro, and Finley. So he's gonna. I don't expect that we're gonna see Yoshihashi, go on a run or anything like that. But he's got some fun matches in front of him, and he's really trying his best. And maybe we should flip-flop him and Finley, give him Finley's booking. Give him. I'm not even joking.
I know you're not. It's just a thought.
Have him beat these dudes. Have him get the U.S. title. Have him tell Will Ospreay, next time you defend that belt, it better be against me. What sounds funner, Yoshihashi and Will Ospreay, or Finley and Will Ospreay?
At this point, definitely Yoshihashi.
Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, Dave, if you're listening, we've been fans of yours in the past, but like, I'm telling you, Yoshihashi is having a better tournament than you. It's time to turn up, bro. It's time to do what you were put on this planet to do. 4 generations, my guy. And you're getting beat by the dude with the staff. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
If not now, then when? Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
It's now or never. But yeah,
I miss Kota Ibushi.
That wraps up the D block and the review of nights 7 through 10. We had a few questions here. First from front of the show, Dan Coffin. He says, "Who has raised their stock so far in this G1? Has anyone dropped, in your opinion?"
Quick answers. I feel like Goto, and Aaron Hanare, and probably Yoshihashi. I think those guys have raised their stock.
Yeah, I would throw in Tama Tonga maybe on that too.
Yeah, Tama for sure.
As far as lower,
nobody's lowered their stock for me.
Yeah, I don't think anybody. I mean, I expect Yujiro and Fale to kind of be where they're at, so I wouldn't say that their stock has dropped, and nobody else I can really say. I would say they've dropped.
Everybody's performing exactly how I expect them to perform, for better or for worse. Nobody there is nobody that is vastly exceeding my expectations. There's nobody that's like, oh my God, wow. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There are people that I think are doing a lot with what they have, but like, there's no one breaking out. Like, there's no one like, remember Kenny's first G1? There's no one like that.
Right.
If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Rambone Slam Pig says, "If you had to guess, is there anyone in this year's G1 field currently in their last tournament? Have any of the newcomers cemented their entry for next year?"
I wouldn't be surprised if this was I wouldn't be surprised if this was Jiro's last tournament.
Could be Ishii's.
There's rumors about that just based on age and everything, but I really hope that's not the case, considering the fact that he's our fucking MVP for the whole tournament right now. In terms of guys that have like solidified themselves, that's a newcomer, I would say no.
I don't know.
Maybe Aaron Hanare.
I think Jonah and Philly Tom.
I'm not discounting the fact that that's possible, but right now where we sit halfway through, I'm not convinced that next year we're going to be seeing either of them in the tournament again. Now, I think they're on the trajectory to possibly be there, but where's the breakout match from either guy?
Yeah, they haven't had the breakout match yet, but I don't know. I just feel like the crowd's gotten really invested in both of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, but then again, it doesn't feel the way that it felt with Alex Zane or with Ace Austin in Super Juniors.
That's true, yeah. Good point.
So I'm not saying it's not possible, but I just don't feel like that yet.
Yeah.
But I do think Aaron Hanare crossed that threshold. So, like, he's on the roster. He's been waiting years. He's finally in it. And if he doesn't get in it next year over, like, a Yujiro, then that would be a shame.
Yeah. Raising Falcon said, if you had to do a 4-block tournament next year, what would you change to make the format better?
I would have the tournament nights be just completely either 1 block or 2 block nights. So either just like all A, all B, all C or D, or, you know, a combination of any combination of the two that you want, but something to kind of focus the stuff in more. I would try and potentially format it in a way where there was less downtime for the guys. And one of two things has to happen. You either need to raise the standard of who's in this tournament so that the blocks are strengthened, or you need to downsize the amount of people that are in the blocks and cut the people that shouldn't be in it, one or the other. And I think cutting people is probably a logistics nightmare. So maybe we should consider bringing in better talent.
Yeah, especially when they've been broken up. After you broke up into 4 blocks, you want. I think at this point, like, you see a block of all 6 killers. Like, maybe you can have a 1-off guy night, quote unquote, a Yano in 1 block. But I feel like you need to have 4 blocks of 6 of the best wrestlers in the world.
Now, before we move on to our preview real quick, I do want to say a couple thoughts. And Jeremy, I think you should say a couple thoughts, because by the time you're back on the show, we're going to be going into the finals. We'll literally be previewing the finals. So you're going to be gone for a while, but like, it's a lot of crying and bemoaning about the G1. And I don't think it's all undeserved, but I will say this. This tournament has not been bad.
Right.
Okay. And there's people out there that are acting like this tournament is bad. And trust me, I'm not defending it because I'm like, oh, it's all good, guys. Let's, no. But there are people who are going overboard and overcorrecting the opposite way because it's not as great as the G1s of the past decade, which let's be very clear. Since I've been watching, since like it's been accessible to watch a G1 the whole way through since like 13 or 14, this G1 doesn't hold up to any of the G1s, period. It just doesn't. But to pretend in your reviews, because you're contrasting it to G1 as a whole and not just to wrestling as a whole, that these are bad shows, that's a bad faith argument. It's just not true. It's a lie, is what it is. And it's also sensationalist. What this tournament is a night where every single night there are mostly just really good matches, and every now and again a couple great matches, and none of them really exceed to the G1 level that you expect. I'm not telling you go out. For those of you listening, if you're not watching the show, I would definitely say check out the recommended matches that are hitting that 4-star level for sure. But I'm not going to sit here and recommend you this G1 and say you need to go watch it. But I will say, if you're a reviewer or you're like one of those people adding scores, stop fucking capping and saying this shit is like 6, a 6 or a 5 or a 4 when it's clearly not. Like, when the matches are clearly good. Like, can't we just tell the truth?
Right. if I had to average all my ratings so far, I would guess they would probably, the average would fall like 3.5 to 3.75.
Yeah.
And that's very good. I get it. It's not 4 3/4. It's not 5 stars. We're not getting all these bangers, but we are getting a lot of very good wrestling. There's been a lot of 3 3/4. There's been a lot of 4-star matches.
Right.
And so, yeah.
It's a lot like last month's Super Juniors.
Right. In a vacuum, like, this is a very good tournament with a lot of, very good to sometimes great wrestling.
Yep.
But then, yeah, if you isolate it and compare it to, like you mentioned, G1s from the last decade, then yeah, of course it's not going to live up to it's not living up to those right now.
I will say this: these nights have been easier to watch than most G1s.
Yeah, that's true.
For better or for worse, they're just easier watches, and I'm not saying that that's like, a net positive, but it's just true. This has been, because most of them are shorter, it's just been easier to kind of get through and watch.
Yeah.
And keep up with. This is the easiest it's ever been for me to keep up with the G1 since we started doing the show.
Yeah. And honestly, I really think that the format's probably the biggest detriment to this tournament thus far. Because, we've had 2 pandemic G1s with 2 blocks, and they've been very, very good. And so I'm wondering, like you mentioned, that this was a back to the 2-block format, will we be talking about a completely different tournament?
I also think it's probably just the malaise of not being able to have crowds cheer, especially after a lot of these guys went overseas, experienced the live crowd, and now they're back home and they can't have, they're back to clap crowds. It's probably a huge, like, morale dump. You know what I mean?
Right. Especially those guys that worked like Forbidden Door and have been working like Dynamite and Rampage. Yep. Yeah.
But we're in group chats and we have people dumping on this. You don't see me capping for it and be like, hold up, guys, it's so good. I'm not going to do that. But I'm seeing these reviewers and I'm talking about, like, these are god awful nights. This is horrible. And it's like, dude, no, it's not. Just tell the truth. Just say it's very good. This is also the worst G1 in a decade. Those two things can be mutually true at the same time.
Yeah.
Period. So we have G1 nights coming up next week. I'll be reviewing these with Chris Samsa. On night 11, we have G1 action. Yujiro will be facing Juice Robinson, Taichi versus Chase Owens, Naito versus Hinare, Jonah versus Jeff Cobb, and the main event will be Tanahashi versus Evil. On night 12, we have El Fantasma versus Yoshihashi, Lance Archer versus Toriano, Goto versus ZSJ, Jay White versus Okan, and in the main event, Shingo Takagi versus Will Ospreay. Big circle on that one. So
let's
definitely
go.
Yep. Also Jay White versus Okan. That's a big one.
Yeah.
And then on night 13, we have G1 action, Evil versus Hinare, Fale versus Lawler, ELP versus Juice, Ishii versus Chase, and then the main event will be Okada versus Jonah. Upset alert.
Yeah, especially in that main event spot. That could be the match that you're looking for to kind of get Jonah in that threshold of coming back next year.
There's someone that can do it. It's Okada.
Yeah.
So this past Saturday was NJPW Music City Mayhem in conjunction with StarCast and Ric Flair's last match pay-per-view. It aired Saturday around like 3 p.m. Eastern. We had 7 matches. I'll just do a quick run through of the results, and then we can maybe both give our quick thoughts on the show since we're running short on time.
Yeah.
So Fred Yehi, Shota Umino, and Yuya Uemura, they defeated Kevin Knight, Ren Narita, and the DKC. Davey Richards successfully defended his MLW National Openweight title against Rocky Romero. Fred Rosser successfully defended his strong Openweight title against Big Damo. Hiromu Takahashi defeated Blake Christian. The United Empire with Alex Zane. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The United Empire. Fletcher, Davis, and TJP, they defeated Alex Zane and FTR. Semi-main event, Alex Shelley and Kushida, the members of the Time Splitters, they wrestled to a 20-minute time limit draw. And then in the main event, in a no disqualification match, Jon Moxley defeated El Desperado by referee's decision, 17 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yeah, so overall, I thought this was a very good show. I just think some things, I'm also like I guess production you could say was fine, but the building is kind of like on one of these like, how would you describe it? Like
it's just an open warehouse.
Yeah, open warehouse kind of building, and it just did not look like a high level like New Japan show. I mean, there's a lot of like big names on this show and some very good matches, and the stage it was presented on just didn't look the best. I mean, it kind of felt like, to me, like a WrestleMania weekend, like New Orleans, like WWN, like Super Show kind of vibe versus, all right, this is New Japan Pro Wrestling putting on this big pay-per-view. We have Jon Moxley on the card. We have Hiromu Takahashi on the card. We have Alex Shelley and Kushida on the card. It just did not feel to me.
And, I mean, for better or for worse, FTR, they're pretty big stars now, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very strange. They had a lot of issues with the mic.
Yeah.
People trying to cut promos post-match, they couldn't do it, so that was a little janky. As far as the show overall, I thought it was pretty good. The Davey Richards versus Rocky Romero match, and also, I mean, that's a battle of former tag team partners in the No Remorse Corp, so that's also interesting. But I felt like the Rosser Damo match and the Davey Richards Rocky Romero match, they weren't bad, but they were kind of like the low lull points of the show.
Yeah.
And I really loved the opener with all the young lions and Freddie Ahai.
Dude, yeah, the interactions with Narita and Umino and Narita and Yumura were so good. And, we had a conversation off the air talking about, who looked the real ace between Umino and Uemura.
Yeah, that one's very interesting, and seeing them side by side was kind of eye-opening.
Mm-hmm.
Hiromu versus Blake Christian just ruled. Like, that was maybe as good or better than almost anything that was in the Best of the Super Juniors this past year.
Yeah, and I think that's where the show really picked up, because that match was awesome. The crowd was really into it. You had a lot of GCW fans in the crowd, so you had big dueling, All Heart, Time Bomb, dueling chants. Hiromu had he brought Daryl out, and there were several Daryls and Carols in the crowd. Daryl joined commentary with Kevin Kelly and Matt Raywall. But yeah, this was a fun match. RLPW, these guys were flipping all over the place, especially Blake Christian. He was doing a lot of really cool stuff.
Hey, I'll say this. I have had some criticisms of Blake Christian in the past. Most of those at this point, I think, are alleviated. Some of the things that I saw as being like issues and inconsistencies, I think that time in WWE and then his reemergence back on the Indies has like changed him as a performer, bro. Like, he's still as dynamic as he was before, but like the little things and like the kind of jankiness to his like game, that stuff's gone, bro. Like, he's on a different level right now. And I thought Hiromu did an incredible job, like putting him over, like, whoa,
oh my gosh,
oh my god, he's so good. And like, he was even like tweeting like, I want this guy in Japan. So like, yeah, expect to see Blake Christian in Japan sometime in the near future, probably.
Yeah.
I thought the Empire versus Zayn FTR match was pretty good. Looks like they're setting up a potential Fletcher Davis versus FTR match for the IWGP titles, which will be interesting. Davis and Fletcher, they're in the runnings for those strong openweight tag team titles. So, could we see New Japan double champions in the near future? Possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, and it sounded like this match could happen in Japan. I think Aussie Open was like, if you want to face us in Japan, something like that. So,
yeah, and I've said this off the air, but I will say this: and it's not because they're just wrestling each other now, or the sudden emergence of FTR as like a top. Well, not sudden emergence, but like, within this past year, they're on this huge trajectory as being like probably the tag team of the year. In my opinion, and I've had this opinion for a long time, I think Aussie Open are the better tag team than FTR. And I think they have been for a while, actually.
Yeah, I would just say FTR just has had the bigger platforms and the bigger opportunities.
Yep.
But the more Aussie Open gets chances, people are going to see
Let me tell you how many tag teams I put above Aussie Open in 2022. The Young Bucks. That's it.
That's the list.
That's the list. So Alex Shelley and Kushida, I thought that they had a really good, fun, interesting match. They both wore the same gear that they wore the first time they ever tagged together. So I think it was a very meaningful. I thought it was interesting. I was like, why is Kushida coming out in his like old gear? Because it seems like he's trying to kind of like break away from that a little bit since he came back to New Japan. But
yeah,
this was a throwback for both guys, kind of like alluding to their previous tag team. And, they went to a time limit draw, which is fitting. We don't see a lot of those in New Japan, and that was kind of meaningful here. And hopefully, especially with Kushida maybe like doing some freelance work, maybe some impact work, we could see them team up again sometime in the future.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I'm hoping this just leads to Alex Shelley coming back to New Japan. I think he would be a great addition to New Japan Strong in the States, and then why not bring him back for Super Juniors?
He's having a renaissance year. So, and then without further ado, our match of the month, Jon Moxley versus El Desperado. And, I had the audacity to question how good this match may or may. For me, it really just came down to the right platform.
Mm-hmm.
Where would Desperado be showcased in the right light against a guy like Jon Moxley, who is a huge encompassing star who I thought could possibly swallow him up. You put him in a AEW match, and I mean, I don't know how much they actually give to Despy, but here on this night, they gave a lot to Despy. These guys are both sickos, and they're about that hardcore deathmatch life. We saw skewers, we saw barbed wire boards, we saw tables and chairs and blood, and it was fucking awesome.
Yeah, this match was absolutely nuts. Yeah, and I watched it right before we got on the air, and we're talking about, match of the month, and as soon as we got online, I was like, yes, this was definitely the match of the month. These guys went out here, had this crazy bloody brawl, Moxley ripping Despy's mask, Despy with the skewers shoving him into Moxley's head, the guitar shot, and then Moxley kind of stabbing Despy in the eye, in the face, like a shard of the guitar.
They were selling that guitar signed by both guys, which I was like, damn, that's pretty cool.
And the barbed wire boards, and oh my gosh, it was just a bloody, crazy match. Moxley sold so much for Despy, made Despy gave him a lot of offense.
I have a criticism, something I really don't like, really, really don't like about the match, though. So Despy, starts attacking the legs, gets him in the numero dos, everything like that. Mox is in trouble. Mox is hurt. Mox is reeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Despy hits him with the fucking Pinche Loco. Doesn't just hit him with the Pinche Loco, rolls through and lifts him up, and Mox just starts blasting him and then hits him with the Death Rider, and it's 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, bro, you got hit with this fucking finish. And he was fixing to hit you with a follow-up version of what should have happened. And I mean, I can tell you, I'm not usually one to say this is what should have happened, but I'm telling you from someone that has learned a little bit about psychology from an actual top-tier great wrestler, what should have happened is he should have got hit with that Pinche Loco. When they rolled through, he should have reversed it. And when he blasted him with a clothesline, he should have fucking fell down and sold the finisher. He no-sold his finisher. Completely no-sold it. And not in the way where it's Wardlow or Goldberg and it's awesome. In a way where it was it just got blown off completely. He ate the Pinche Loco. Now, part of me feels like Mox probably didn't know that. Maybe that was maybe Mox didn't know that was his finisher.
Yeah.
But he did a great job making him look great, but dude, you can't eat someone's finisher like that and then just finish them. It looks horrible.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it didn't bother me too much because going into the match, I already knew Moxley was winning. But
that's the issue. If when they do things like that, it makes you care less.
Yeah.
They need he should have at least fucking fell down, and there should have been a double down. that led to the finish stanza. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like he was trying to hit him with his super finisher, the roll through, the one, and then the roll through, and then the second one. Which, like, if he hit that, hypothetically, that should have been the end of Mox.
Right.
But yeah, Mox was just like, "Fuck this."
Hold this.
Like, okay, I guess.
There's also the spot where they had like that board that had like half cut like soda cans or whatever.
That was crazy.
And Mox gave Despy an X-Plex onto them. Oh my gosh, that was nuts.
That was nuts.
Yeah.
Other than that, the match was fantastic. I loved the match. I thought it was great. Mox tried to cut a post-match promo, but like didn't have a good audio. But I kind of caught what he was saying, and he said, "Doesn't matter what the top letters at the marquee are, whether it's NJPW or AEW. The only 3 letters you need to pay attention to when they're at the top of the bill is MOX." And I was like, "That's pretty tight."
Yeah, that's a good promo. So we got a question here from friend of the show, Dan Coffin. Says, as a semi-ghoul, I love the main event of MCM. Moxley has been crushing everything since he came back from his time off, including his NJPW work. Would you put him in consideration for NJPW Wrestler of the Year?
No. Not even like, I wouldn't even consider him at all. And it's basically based off of just one simple fact. He's only had 4 matches in the last calendar year. That's not enough. Granted, they've been awesome. Probably at least 3 of them have been some of the better matches in New Japan. But also keep in mind, one of those was on a cross-promotional show, so that one's a little, iffy.
Yeah.
But like realistically, he's only had 4 matches. It's not enough.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at other guys' year, like Okada and Jay White and Ospreay, like it's hard to match up what they've been doing all year in Japan versus, like you mentioned, the handful of matches that Mox has had. So then moving on to New Japan Strong, we had night 4 of the Ignition Tour. And I did not see this week's Strong, but we'll run through the results here. We had Jeff Cobb defeating Jordan Clearwater, 4 minutes and 27 seconds. I can kind of envision what happened.
It was a squash.
Yeah, quick squash, tour of the islands. Fred Yehai defeated Bateman, 7 minutes 30 seconds. I know those guys have been feuding. Then in the semi-main event, we had the Strong Openweight Tag Team Title Tournament semifinal match.
Yehai hit Tyler Bateman with a spinning back fist that like fucked up Tyler Bateman, which was pretty awesome.
Nice.
Like he hit him with a spinning back fist and then sunk in a submission. The referee called it off, which was like pretty badass actually.
Nice. So yeah, then in the Strong Tag Team Title semifinal match, we had Aussie Open defeating the Stray Dog Army. So the finals of the tournament will be Aussie Open, Kyle Fletcher and Mark Davis versus the mixed match team of the Fallen Angel, Christopher Daniels and Yuya Uemura. Then the main event of this show, we had the Bullet Club team of Chase Owens, Hikuleo, and Jay White defeating Fred Rosser, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Kevin Knight.
Yeah, not much to add there. I mean, those matches were both fine. I think it looks like my opinion, Aussie Open is probably winning these Strong Openweight titles, most likely. But yeah, Jay cut a promo at the end of the match. That's pretty much it.
Nice. So then moving on.
In fact, it was a great promo. So I probably wouldn't do it justice, like kind of recapping it here, but yeah, that was a highlight. That probably was the highlight of the show. That and Fred Yehai's spinning back fist, but kind of a forgettable Strong, honestly.
Yeah. So then, real quick with the news, just a couple things here. The main thing here was Carl Fredericks, like we alluded to earlier, is no longer with New Japan Pro Wrestling. The 32-year-old posted a message on his social media announcing that he will not be re-signing with the company. He said, as of today, August 1st, I am no longer under contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling. I will not be re-signing with the company at this time. Though there is disappointment in the ending of this chapter, I am grateful for the last 4 years traveling the world and growing with my best friends. I want to say thank you to the company for the opportunities, and especially thank you to Shibata-san for believing in me and bringing me along with his journey with the LA Dojo. Last but not least, thank you to my fans and thank you to the NJW fans for your support over these years. I hope you will continue to support me along my path, wherever that may lead. And we have some questions here on this. Rambo Slam Pig says, what are your thoughts on the departure of Carl Fredericks? Seems like a big miss to not be able to capitalize on a guy like him. Any ideas what might be next or where he would fit best?
Yeah, those are hard questions to answer. I mean, my thoughts on the departure, I think it's unfortunate. I think a lot of this has to do with what took place between the pandemic starting and now. And also a lot of things we're probably not privy to. We don't know all the ins and outs of the backstage ongoings with, management and Carl, so it's hard to say what did or didn't happen, but it is unfortunate. Also, unfortunately, it sounds like the New Japan Cup winner curse has struck yet again.
You mean the Young Lion Cup?
Yeah, my bad. The Young Lion Cup curse has struck yet again. But Carl was a guy that we saw a lot of upside in, big fans of. He was gracious enough to spend some time with us early in the pandemic to come on this show, which we are very grateful for. I think that he has star potential written all over him. I think we've been very I think that the booking of him in New Japan over this pandemic period has been very questionable, for sure.
Yeah.
From the outside looking in. At the same time, there have been times where I've questioned his work and I've thought that it kind of regressed in a way in comparison to some of his contemporaries like Clark Connors and Alex Coughlin. And again, is that because of the booking? Is that because of something that was going on with training? We don't really know. I don't know how much that has to do with him or the company. And it seems like there was an impasse between both sides and they weren't able to continue to work together, which is unfortunate. I did think that he was a guy that could potentially be a top gaijin in the company and even future champion. That's how high the ceiling looked for him. And, who knows, maybe one day he will return to the company, but for now, he'll be going away. And it sounds like, I don't know, maybe AEW, maybe WWE. I think those are both realistic possibilities for him.
Yeah, I could easily see him signing with either of those promotions, especially with WWE being open once again to bringing in wrestlers that have experience and Triple H heading creative. I could see him doing a lot with Carl Fredericks. And then, Tony Khan, he's putting NXT 2.0 geeks on TV. I think he would definitely grab a guy like Carl Fredericks and do something with him. MJSPR says, Carl Fredericks has opted not to resign with NJPW. WTF happened?
We don't know. Like I said, I think that his outlash or, his tweets that he posted because he didn't get the G1, that probably didn't sit well with management. But then again, like I said, we don't really know what happened. I mean,
right. I mean,
he alluded to things in that tweet, promises that were made and things that were spoken. So who really knows, at the end of the day.
Right. From a surface level, it just seems like the blow up G1 tweet is a thing that was a catalyst. But like you mentioned, a lot of things that he did tweet about kind of afterwards and what people are speculating. There might be some more stuff. Maybe he was kind of promised a G1 spot and it didn't happen. We don't really know.
Who knows what happened before that and after that, and in the build and lead up to that. We don't know. These are real humans and real people that are putting their whole careers and lives, at stake every time they go out to wrestle and every time they sign a contract and decide to go live in a house with a strange Japanese man that, borderline abuses them in training.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
makes them do squats when they go out to the beach.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we're not there. We don't know. We can't tell that story for them because we really don't know what happened.
Yeah. Les Commission 7252 says, in my opinion, it seems like a work just for him to come back as a heel. But if it is true, do you guys support Frederick's case of not being in G1 this year? I can agree that guys like Yujiro or Balak Fale could have been spots given to Fredericks.
Yeah, I mean, hypothetically, I agree with that. But then again, I'm not the company and I'm not him. And I don't know. You know?
Yeah. I mean, from a fan perspective, like we mentioned, I think having Fredericks in there would have been much better than having a Fale or a Yujiro in the tournament. But yeah, I mean, again, we don't know exactly what went on backstage. I mean, if this is some kind of work, which I highly doubt it is, just given the nature of this. I mean, I guess that could be cool, but yeah, I think he's gone. I think he might take a break. He might focus on DJing for a while, and then I think he'll reemerge in AEW or WWE. Last piece of news here, Ren Narita, he defeated Yuya Uemura on the pre-show of Ric Flair's last match. I didn't catch this one either, but saw some clips on Twitter, and I know these guys are both awesome, so it looked like it was a fun matchup here, and I'm loving this kind of rivalry that's, brewing between Narita and Uemura.
Definitely.
All right, last few questions here, then we'll do recommended match of the week and get out of here. Les Commission 7252 says, as of right now, do you guys possibly think that we'll see the expansion of the Super Juniors Tag League this year and the return of the Super J Cup?
I don't know why they would expand on the tag league. They don't have enough tag teams to fill it as is.
Yeah, honestly, I would have just preferred them to go back to doing a single elimination tournament for Super Junior Tag League. But I guess we'll see how that goes. But I don't expect that tournament to get a big push. Super J Cup I could see returning with New Japan Strong and some of the junior talents that they have there.
That last Super J Cup sucked though, and I'm not a big fan of putting the stamp of approval of a legendary thing like J Cup on something that's mid.
Yeah.
And it's not something that was done annually in the past either. It's been intermittent for undeterminate amount of time. There was 94, 95, and then after that it was every so often. So for me, it's I'm fine with them doing it, but if you're gonna do it, it needs to be with the best guys in the world. Which in fact, the one that they did in America was with incredible talent, but the way they formatted it and in that empty building, it just sucked. And the short match times. They need to actually do it for real with some of the best guys and make it matter and make it be that real,
Yeah. Which wrestler should have been IWGP Heavyweight Champion before it was retired last year, and which wrestler do you guys definitely want to see hold the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship? In my opinion, I believe Suzuki should have had the previous belt, and I definitely want to see either Sonata or ZSJ hold this IWGP World Heavyweight Championship.
As far as guys that should have held it that did not hold it, I do kind of feel like Suzuki would have been cool, especially considering if he were to win it, he would complete that rare trifecta of being All Japan, Noah, and New Japan champion. And that's probably never going to happen at this point. So that is a little unfortunate, but I can't think of too many others where I'm they should have held it,
Yeah, I think Suzuki is probably the most kind of glaring one that probably should have had it that didn't. I mean, I know he mentioned Sabre for the world title, but I think Sabre could have been a guy who could have held the V4 IWGP Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah, I would definitely be a proponent of Zack Sabre Jr. holding the world title. And I don't know, maybe this is an indictment on New Japan, but I can't think of too many guys that haven't held it yet that I think need to hold it. I guess there's probably going to be a lot of people that would say Naito. And I like Naito, but I'm not this Naito in 2022 is not the same Naito from 2017. So
right.
I don't know.
I mean, I know Ospreay's already held it, but he didn't really get a run with it due to.
Or you can't name someone that already. That's not the question.
I know, but we missed out on a potential 6 month to year run of him having title offenses.
Tanahashi needs to hold it.
Go Ace.
Oh man.
Hawaiian Punch VV, he says.
I know Rich is probably listening being like, what you mean?
Kenny. Hawaiian Punch BV, what do you think about Gato setting the booking trend of interference heavy stables in Japan? In Noah, Los Perros del Mal de Japón were having matches that ended in DQ. In AJPW, Voodoo Murderers is somehow back and still alive, and they're kind of making the promotion unbearable to watch lately.
Yeah, but well, first off, the Voodoo Murders like kind of existed before Bullet Club and all that, and this stuff has always existed in Japanese wrestling. It's always existed. I mean, you can go back forever. There was like one time I was like tracking the history of like Chaos and like how Chaos like formed from like Rise, and I started going back and like found like I don't know, and there's just been so many like heel faction groups that cheated and did DQs all throughout Japanese wrestling history. Like, it's pretty prominent, at least going back to the 80s. So I don't know. I don't think it's all Gato, but yeah, I think that maybe there is some influence, but I don't know. Also, I don't watch Noah in All Japan anyway, so fuck
yeah. Yeah, I don't watch Noah All Japan at all, but yeah, also not the best trend to have a bunch of heel factions having a bunch of matches and a DQ and interference. He also said thoughts on the newest member of Bullet Club, Mima Shimoda.
So I haven't had time to watch the backstage promos. I saw that Jay White is doing the Jay Tonight Show or something like that.
Yeah, I haven't seen all the backstage promos either, so I'm not sure what this is referring to.
Yeah, he did a promo where Mima was back there and he like called her up, and I don't know what was said. Bro, we're barely like finishing all these shows.
Yeah, like you mentioned, we had freaking 4 New Japan shows on Saturday themselves, so yeah.
Yeah, ridiculous. So I don't know. I didn't see that.
All right, let's end here. Recommended match of the week. So last week for the recommended match, I recommended the G1 27 match between Tanahashi and Zack Sabre Jr. What do you think about this one?
Great match. Incredible first opening stanza between these two guys. I talked about Tanahashi dropping first time matches against guys that like upset him in the G1. Zack is another person in that mold. In 2017, Tanahashi was in the tournament with all the injuries, the bicep injury and the back and the knees, and all that, and the bad neck. And Zack kind of knew that and took advantage of it. They had an incredible clash of styles, but the one thing that was just awesome throughout the match was Zack is this like, obviously this technical wizard, right? He does all this cool, inventive stuff, but like Tanahashi, he's classic pro wrestling. But even though he doesn't know all these flashy techniques, he knows things that work, and you can put him in pretty much any bad situation and he's going to know how to get out of it and get into something that still works. And even though like Zack knows what Tanahashi's going to do, it doesn't make what Tanahashi's doing any less effective. And that's kind of always been the dynamic between the two of them. Is like Zack tries to put Tanahashi in these positions where Tanahashi is clueless, and Tanahashi is never clueless. He's able to always grab an arm or grab a leg or grab a head and work out of it. And I think that's one of the things that has always made their dynamic work. It's like, these two different classes of styles of working that still just kind of mesh beautifully. And eventually Zack was able to really focus hardcore on the arms and all that and just kind of wear him down there. And then obviously Tanahashi went for the knees and the leg like he always does and tried to set up for the high fly flows. And at a certain point it looked like he was going to win, but Zack was able to, get past all of that. He was able to outlast, the knee attacks, outlast the clover hold, and eventually got Tanahashi on the mat, got him grounded, got him into, a hold. I don't even know what to call it. And then, he did the classic Zack thing. He gets him in a bad position. He looks like he's going to get to the rope, up, I got this arm. Oh, I got this arm. Oh, I got you here. Boom, I'm gonna wrench on this. And he got Tanahashi in like basically what looked like a Rings of Saturn, but then he like turned it into like an Americana / like hoverboard lock while all at the same time, and Tanahashi like had to submit. And Don Callis and Kevin Keller in the call, and they're incredible. And this is, you know, Zach's first G1, so it's a really great match. I definitely liked this match better than their most recent one, although they're not far off.
Nice. So then for the excursion match of the week, you picked Shima's 25th anniversary match that happened in May of this year, with Shima teaming up with Shingo to take on Kawakami and Sakamoto. And this was a really fun match. And I think the most interesting thing about this match was, you know, we heard all the backstage rumors and stories that there was a lot of heat between Shima and Shingo, and when Shima and Strong Heart started wrestling in New Japan, that Shingo seemed to have a problem with that, and there was issues, and we hear all this stuff, and all these back and stuff, I guess, that happened in Dragon Gate. But it seems like somehow, some way, these guys have squashed the beef, and it was very interesting just seeing them working together in this match, and I thought they worked really well together, made a very interesting team. Majority of the match was kind of built on Shingo kind of taking the heat, and Shingo was in there. I would say majority of the match, especially the last like closing stretch, he was in there. And it all built to the hot tag of Shima, and Shima came in there, got the hot tag, and was kind of cleaning house. And then the closing stretch was kind of built on Shima and Shingo working together, and then Shima hitting the Meteora knees to get the win.
Yeah, I watched this. I read the reviews before I made the suggestion, and I went ahead and watched it myself. And I thought it was very fun. I thought it was cool to see Shima and Shingo wrestle together. But the early parts was just kind of like fun, fluff shenanigans, and then it got very good down the stretch. But, I didn't think that the scores that people online were giving this were indicative of like what I actually saw.
We're in inflation right now,
Inflation, yes.
These star ratings are being inflated out here.
Yo, we're not just we're in the middle of a recession, although they literally won't call it a recession. Yeah, but I work in finance, and I can tell you what a recession is. A recession is 2 quarters of a downturn for, the GDP and everything downturning, and that's what has happened. But for some reason, they have literally officially changed what a recession is. You know why? Because election season is coming up, and they don't want any president that is in the middle of a recession loses. Also, historically, any president that has gas prices go up by this amount always fucking loses. And they're trying to do everything to make sure that this guy doesn't lose. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but I'm just telling you, as someone that works in finance, like, we're in the middle of a recession, but they literally won't call it that. It's so crazy.
Oh, man.
But we got some matches coming up for next week.
Yeah, so for my pick for the excursion match of the week, I'm picking Kushida versus Rich Swann. That happened recently on Impact Wrestling. I believe that was last Thursday. The match is up for free on NJ. Okay, I don't think it's free. I think you have to have a subscription, but it is up on NJPW World if you are a subscriber.
Nice. And my recommended match of the week is Boss Rutan versus Koji Kanemoto from October 26th, 2002 for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title. And next week will be Chris Samsa, so he has agreed to watch my recommended match of the week. I will watch Jeremy's excursion match. And then next week, Chris will give me a recommended match recommendation. And I will give an excursion match, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, that's going to wrap it up. Like we said, next week, Chris Samsa will be joining the young boy for next week's episode, and they'll discuss G1's nights 11 through 13. So if you enjoyed today's show, please consider making a donation. Visit socialsuplex.com patreon.com/donate and click on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. Make sure to connect with us on social media. On Twitter, the show is at KI Strong Style. You can follow me at Jeremy L. Donovan. The network is at Social Suplex on Facebook. We are facebook.com/Social Suplex. Also find us in the Wrestling Squared Circle Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Wrestling Squared Circle. On Reddit, on the Pro Black Guy, just Keeping It Strong Style. You can email me, jeremy@socialsuplex.com. Check out all the other shows here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. One Nation Radio, hosted by Rich Latta and James Boyd. The Grave Consequences, hosted by Caleb and Maserati. All Things Elite with Floyd and Austin. The AEW Match Guy Podcast, hosted by Sir Sam. The Great Match Generator, hosted by Danny. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review. And we will catch you next week on Keeping It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts.
Ichiban.
Thank you for listening to Keepin' It Strong Style. We'll see you next time.